I'd like to call to order this business meeting of District 116 for February 19th, 2019. Our secretary was not with us tonight. She is ill. And so Secretary Pro Tem, be ready to take roll call, please.
Okay. Member Hall?
Here.
Member Pulaski?
Here.
Member Patton?
Here.
Member Carter is here. Vice President Rollins?
Here.
President Dennett?
Here. We do have a quorum present this evening. Do we have at least one addition or correction to the agenda this evening, in that we're going to have a presentation from Becky Parks, our choral director at Urbana High School. Are there any other additions, corrections, or modifications this evening?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move into commendations and recognitions.
Shauna, if the board would like to go out front, we have some of our high school students who won some very prestigious awards, so we'd like to recognize them as a part of Tiger Spotlight. So, Shauna.
Okay. Wait to the board. If you're here, come on up. The following UHS students are being recognized for being selected to participate in the Illinois Music Education Association District 3 Jazz and Concert Festivals, which were held in Peoria on January 24th through the 26th. Achieving All-State in Orchestra is Dimitri Glaros and Max Zhang. And for band, Olivia Rosenstein. Achieving All-State Honors in Orchestra, Eliza Abamonte. And for band, Max Ando and Peyton Borish. And achieving All-State in chorus, Michael Tessine.
Next up will be citizen statements, and in order to address the board this evening, you need to fill out a goldenrod sheet and turn it into our recording secretary in the back of the room. To give you time to do that, we'd like to recognize Austin from UPTV for running the cameras for us tonight, making sure that we're able to be viewed at home. I do have a few people that wish to address the board this evening, so we'll start. And then anyone else that wishes to, please fill out those goldenrod sheets. First is Becky Fuller.
Okay, we're good? Hi. Okay, my name is Becky Fuller, and I live at 2112 Burleson Drive in Urbana, and I have a daughter at Yankee Ridge and a son at the high school. And I'm here tonight to register my concern regarding the high rates of teacher turnover. This fall, my son's Spanish teacher, Ron Lavari, announced he was leaving at winter break, and when the kids returned in January, they discovered that they had no replacement Spanish teacher, and instead they had a substitute who could not help them with Spanish. They had a sub for a good 5 to 6 weeks. Now, eventually, a partial solution was reached where one of our remaining Spanish teachers had her schedule adjusted so that she now teaches an extra class of Spanish 3-4, and I just heard the good news that we just hired a new Spanish teacher to teach the remaining sections. And I want to be clear that I'm really thankful to Ms. Alvarez and Ms. Finch and all the people on the board to whom we reached out for help with this problem. But this episode highlights a greater problem that we are facing. So right now at UMS, we only have one proper 8th grade science teacher. The other two 8th grade teams have long-term substitutes. In 6th grade math, we have one proper math teacher, and the other 2 teachers are long-term subs. And on one of the teams, the original long-term substitute left after a few weeks and was replaced, and that person has since left. And so my understanding, if it's correct, is that the kids are on their 3rd math teacher. We are also short one 6th grade science teacher due to the departure of Ashley Gentner, who was a very qualified science teacher. And I don't want this to be taken as being demeaning to the substitute teachers. We clearly really need them right now, and we value all that they do. My husband has often taught as a substitute for Urbana School District, and I'm sure that these folks are working really hard. And it might also be that some of these people turn out to be really high quality first-rate teachers, but we can't deny that many of these folks are first-time teachers and that many of them leave after a few weeks. So why is our rate of teacher turnover so high, and why can't we fill our vacancies? I want to take these 2 questions in turn and start with the question of why we can't fill our posts. And I don't know all the details of how the hiring process works, but I've been told by many teachers that the number of applicants that are applying to our jobs has fallen dramatically, and they've indicated that this is due to the manner that we solicit and accept applications to the Regional Office of Education. So teachers have told me that in the past that there were jobs that would have had many applicants to them to where we only have 2 or 3 applicants applying to these jobs. And this strikes me as problematic. So one of our stated goals is to diversify our teaching faculty. And this is a good goal. Everybody needs a role model. But this requires that we have a large pool of applicants. So let's imagine that we have a pool of applicants and that half of them are good qualified teachers. Now let's imagine that half of these good applicants are people who can serve as role models to some of our students from underrepresented groups. Now let's imagine that we have Champaign and Rantoul and other places trying to hire these talented folks. You can see what the problem is. Creating a talented, diverse workforce requires us to have job searches with a large, robust pool of applicants. The second question is, why are we losing our teachers, and what can we do about it? And this is a complicated question. To the administrators, I would ask that and tell them that teachers want to work collaboratively to find solutions to problems. And my impression is that this is happening in a pretty healthy way in some of our buildings, but that this is lacking in others. To the parents, I think that teachers simply want to know that they are appreciated. I'll say that my daughter has a fantastic 5th grade teacher, Erin I, in Yankee Ridge, who we were super lucky to have. My son had a very good experience at UMS on Team Hercules last year, and he's had several good teachers at the high school in his first year there, with the noted lack of a teacher for several weeks in the 2nd term. From the kids, the teachers want respect. They don't want fights. And the job of the teachers is to come in and teach, and the job of the students is to come in and to try. And yes, there's going to be kids with problems, and teachers, of course, need to forge relationships with all of their students. But good teachers want to help their kids solve their problems. But the kids need to keep their end of the bargain. They need to come in and be respectful and to try. So as a parent of a 5th grader, I'm sitting here looking at these vacancies in the 6th grade. Can we guarantee that we will have teachers in math and science for all of our 6th graders next year? And I'm going to argue that if you care just not about the education of my kid, but if you care about racial justice and equitable outcomes for all of our kids, then we have to prioritize the retention and the recruitment of high-quality teachers. It's unfair for some kids to have a teacher for the full year in math and for other kids to have a string of substitutes. All of our kids deserve good teachers. And I hope that I don't come off as a negative Nelly, but I really think that Urbana as a community, all of us, the administrators, the parents, the kids, that we need to come together to solve this problem. And I quickly want to thank the board for all that you do. I know that you guys put in tremendous amounts of time and that you lose sleep and have stomach acid over this. We thank you for serving. I also want to thank Dr. Williams and thank you for serving and for coming back to serve and for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Audrey Ishii, if I pronounced that correct. I couldn't hear you. Please say it again.
Good evening. My name is Audrey Ishii.
Ishii.
I'm a substitute teacher for the district and also the school district representative to Urbana's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, which is concerned with studying and promoting bicycling and walking the Urbana way. I want you to know that Urbana is recognized as one of only 34 gold-level bicycle-friendly communities in the entire nation. It is the only one in this state. Tonight, you're going to be hearing from the Studio GC about the campus land use plan and design effort. And I think that that is absolutely a wonderful opportunity to give the children of Urbana access to a walkable and bikeable school. Not just the children who live in the immediate vicinity who are doing so now, but also children who are riding the bus and being driven to school right now. If they can be encouraged with improved bicycle facilities and planning so that they can come to school awakened and calmed and ready to learn. It's an opportunity also to find a way to incorporate movement and nature into the classroom learning environment. I want to encourage you to be sure and pay close attention, prioritize the very recent research that's showing that connecting very short-term physical activity, even so much as moving around within the school, to improved achievement test scores and even retention of learning that occurs either during or immediately following a small bout of physical activity. Weeks later, the retention has been shown to be greater. Recently, they're putting more focus on children, not just on dementia in adults, for example, which a lot of the focus has been up till now. Imagine that if 5 to 10 minutes of calisthenics, Tai Chi, or a mindful walk outside in some green space was enough to render the remaining 40 minutes of class time truly effective and under control. What a difference that would make. What if we could stop talking about discipline and environmental deficits in families because we finally realize that the school environment that is presently designed and pretty much hasn't changed in a couple hundred years is not what children were ever meant to experience in the 100,000 years of ancestry that got us here today. Teachers are the lucky ones in our school right now because we're the ones who are walking and standing throughout the day. We have children that are arriving on a bus ride 30 minutes before school, asked to sit in front of their locker because to let them be free is risking a lack of safety or a fight. And that's kind of crazy because once school starts, it's sit down and be quiet with 4 minutes break for the bathroom and to get from class to class. Sit down, be quiet. And then when there's any kind of trouble, we just double down on the restrictive policies. We start marching them in lines. We take away bathroom breaks. I mean, the time is subtracted, and neither you nor I would really ever endure what we're asking these kids to endure. So there's a lot of expenditures being made on mindfulness training, but we need to realize that the mind is firmly attached to the body of a very energetic person born to move. Movement in and of itself can actually improve the executive control functions of the brain, leading to less conflict and less need for restorative justice, meaning that we can take a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. I will send the board recent research on this. At this point, I want to play the new recommendations from our Health and Human Services on movement and brain health. It's an update that was made, it's released in November. It's the first update since 2008. Please listen closely.
Factor driving these recommendations.
Increasing physical activity in childhood does more than just fend off weight problems. Exercise can also have some immediate benefits. It can help boost our moods, tamp down anxiety, and in children, it can help them do better in school. Here's Chuck Hillman of Northeastern University, who was also on the advisory committee.
See, this is a really exciting area, the study of a single bout of exercise having a benefit to cognition and brain function.
Hillman explains what he's found is that a single workout, say 20 minutes on a treadmill, can lead to improved attention span and an enhanced ability to fend off distractions.
So we see, using standardized achievement tests, that following a single bout of exercise, we find benefits to reading comprehension and arithmetic.
The effects fade quickly, which suggests that daily exercise or daily movement is key.
The secret to
Okay. They go on to say that forming a lifetime habit, there's also research that shows brain health is enhanced throughout life. Okay, tonight I don't have time to talk about the impacts of trees and green space on learning and health. I'm sure you're all aware that there's research at the University of Illinois about that. Professor Matthew Browning at the U of I reports that $1 investment on trees and green space can return $260 to $850 in lowered health care costs, as well as increased lifetime earnings for poor children who have greater access to green space. I just want to encourage you to be sure and think of this study as just the physical part of the temporal and physical investment we need to make for the children in Urbana and their learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the board this evening? Anyone else wish to address the board? Seeing none, we'll go ahead on our agenda. We have no call for an executive meeting or session after this evening's agenda. We do need a motion to approve the agenda as modified to include the presentation from Ms. Parks.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We're now ready for our administrative reports. And first up on that is our secondary campus land use study update.
President Dimmick, Superintendent Williams, thank you very much for having us out to speak with you for our latest update on the campus land use study that we've been working on. Myself, Corey Boaz, obviously, Pat Callahan, partner for Studio GC Architects. Just want to give you a brief update on what we've learned over the last couple months.
So the last 2 months we've spent engaging the public. That includes students, parents, faculty, to get their input on what it is about the land use plan that would impact them and what concerns or issues that they feel the existing campus has. So parallel to that, we've had our civil engineers and our traffic engineers doing their studies, and our next step is actually to start some of the conceptual designs for the campus, kind of rethink, if you will. So really, we're going to be using the time over the next 8 weeks. The intent was to have this completed or presented to you, at least in its final draft form in May. That was the original target date. So we'll really be using March and April to spend some time together, both administration and board, to share with you some of the things that we see based on what we've heard and some ideas. And I also want to let you know that we heard loud and clear from the groups. Bicycles, pedestrians, traffic on campus needs to be addressed. And we certainly want to share a couple of highlights from each of those focus group sessions. We prepared meeting minutes, so we recorded all of the comments made by the folks that were in attendance, or students, or staff, and we're going to share a little bit of that with you tonight. So Corey, go ahead.
Yeah. So like Pat said, next several slides will go over one slide per each student for each session we did. So the first happened in late November. We met with the high school students directly after school, and the commons was filled with students. So we got a lot of interesting comments, a lot of active comments. It took a couple minutes for them to warm up to us, but once they did, they just kept talking and talking. So I'm not going to read all these lists, but I'm going to highlight some of the bullet points for them. As you can see, the graphics on the left kind of indicate the areas where they focus their comments on. So first of all, pedestrian safety for the whole campus is inadequate. Again, harping on the traffic, the students, the bikes, there's no real dedicated area where they can be. There's we presented like some options for an exterior lunch pavilion or an activity space. Again, there's maybe 2 or 3 picnic tables on the whole site, and we possibly expand on this and kind of alleviate some of the pressures within the high school and middle schools for exterior eating areas or gathering spaces. After we presented a lot of the options, one of the students stood up and said, "This is college stuff, right?" And well, used to be. Now it's everywhere. We have the foresight to bring the college stuff down to the high school and even the elementary levels.
That was in response to some discussions about what we do with outdoor learning space, environmental classrooms, performance areas, gathering spaces, et cetera. So it was kind of a really great response after we got a chance to really get them going. Because once we got them going, it was a little hard to calm them down. But they were very excited. It was a lot of fun. Very excited.
So next, again, a full room, full in the commons of the middle school and the high school staff. Again, highlighting several areas within the site where they picked up on. So again, traffic patterns are confusing. Where the buses, obviously buses have their own area, but cars pick up drop-offs on all the lots. Kind of confusing, especially to visitors, first-time visitors. One of the items was to isolate the bus traffic. That's one of the charges we'll have to prepare in the next couple of weeks to present to you is how are we going to do that. One of the comments was we were proposing to do some sort of temporary or some edible acres or gardenings. One of the comments was, well, we have existing greenhouses. We got to make sure those are in full uses before we try to propose some other spaces for gardening. And then, again, back to the lunch pavilion, providing multi-use outdoor covered areas for portions of the site.
And the idea really, in discussion with the staff, was to create outdoor venues that allows the classroom to be extended. So if we talk about, previous guest talked about movement, right? Going from the classroom inside to the classroom outside, getting some fresh air, taking advantage of nature, but actually taking and creating some project space outside the classroom. So these are the types of things we're looking at, is really the kind of the classroom extended by utilizing the site a little more effectively.
And continuing on, next we met with some of the families of the middle school and the high school. Again, several of the areas are starting to be a little repetitive between the groups. But here is one of the comments was, walking and biking is Urbana. We definitely agree with the community here, but we can't really do that safely on campus. And that is, back to the previous speaker, we'll be providing isolated areas or ways we can access this site for both walkers and bikers and other pedestrians and other traffic flows. No street sidewalk alignments. This was a comment made, I believe, at one of the board meetings and as several communities. You look on all 4 bounding streets, it's very rare that you have a connecting sidewalk that is in alignment without having to cross at a crosswalk that is not aligned with the opposite side of the streets. And more traffic controls potentially, so just discussing with the city of Urbana to see what we can possibly do there. And also limited parking for all the building users. As we can see, just looking at this aerial from Google Maps, all spots are completely filled. And we know that parking has extended onto the neighboring streets. That might not be the best possible solution here. So that's why we will be presenting some options in the near future. Last we discussed, we had a small group, very active group though, for the elementary student families. I recognize a couple of them sitting behind us today. Again, some of the areas are getting very repetitive, but here is dedicated itinerant staff parking. If we have full parking lots and we have teachers or staff is trying to come and access the site, they might have to park way north on Broadway, way east on Fairlawn to get here, where they're only here for maybe a couple hours a day. That's opportunities we're not in front of students. The track is circled. Several of the comments throughout all the meetings dealt with the public track is limited. There's maybe options we could work with outside communities or outside members that can possibly help the maintenance or make the track use a little more popular and more available. And then provide more hands-on outdoor spaces. Again, going back to the outdoor learning centers or pavilions and items like that. And our group was the middle school neighbors, so the areas around the community.
So these are folks that may or may not have students in the district who actually live in the surrounding homes.
And so they offered up several items, several different partnerships that we could partner with to develop some of these areas within the campus. So, example like the Park District, the CU Schools Foundation, the university nearby, Habitat for Humanity, Carl, Future Cities with Middle School, and various other opportunities.
Because these folks looked at this as opportunities for students and teachers, for classroom environments that are outside the building proper, but felt that partnerships would make them a little more, would extend their usability and life into the community. And creating these partnerships wouldn't just be a pavilion that happens to sit on the school site, but things that could be programmed and utilized for the community at large. So it's certainly something we want to explore.
And this group concentrated on the north lot of the middle school lot. So during pickup and drop off, that gets congested. People are trying to turn left, turn right onto Vine, and then you back up. As you can see, areas of Vine are highlighted there in orange. They're backups at both the morning and the afternoon sessions. And that's not, honestly, it's not fair to the city either.
So our next steps are really to develop initial schemes based on this input, as well as what the engineers have been working on to identify issues that they observed for traffic patterns, et cetera, as well as the entire campus plan, looking at inventory of properties that the district now has in their possession, their ownership. We'll be refining these schemes again over the next 8 weeks, so you'll be seeing us in March and in April. The target date originally was May 7th. We believe we can still hit that, but that's not a set in stone. If we need a little more time, we're certainly more than happy to take that time to make sure we have the right plan for the district. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
Board members, questions?
I'm glad you were able to get so many people involved in the input sessions. It sounds like you really got student, neighbors, adults from all the three communities, middle, high school, and elementary.
It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Folks were really engaged.
Yeah, and to see repetition, I think it's a good thing, because that means that we have some consensus around, what the issues are. And I do appreciate that so many of your points had to do with making better use of outdoor learning space, to kind of follow up on Ms. Ishii's comments during the citizen statements, because I think that's something that will benefit all of us, so thank you.
Our pleasure.
All right, any other questions? Appreciate the update. We'll be looking forward, I think right at the beginning, you said in the opening, you're going to have some conversations still yet with the board, and I do want to indicate that we do have a ongoing facilities committee, and so I hope that there's an opportunity to have that discussion there as
We will
well.
certainly coordinate that to ensure that happens.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Very much.
Good to see you. Thank you. Our pleasure.
Next is our Aramark update.
Can I just say, while they're setting up, I don't think the board has met Natalie. Natalie Lee, so I wanted to introduce her first. She joined us in November.
Yes.
So she's been with us for a few months now, doing a great job, and wanted to bring her in tonight to have the opportunity to make a presentation to the board, plus get to meet her. So thanks for coming, Natalie.
Can you guys see that? Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to go a brief over. I've only been with the district for a few months, and so I am still completely planting my feet. But as I am looking at new things we can do, this district has a lot in the food service department. And so my goal is just to better that and see how we can improve those areas within what we already have going on in this district. So some of the updates, some of the things we're doing at Aramark on the food service side is we're really trying to get our students more involved in breakfast. We have a nice lunch flow, but breakfast sometimes, even though it's free within the district CEP, we have a lot of students who just don't like to wander to the cafeteria and actually have to sit and have breakfast. So we're working on some ways. We do our breakfast cart in the middle schools, and we do breakfast in the classroom at our elementary schools, but we're just trying to find some foods that they are really willing to try that is new, healthy, and still yet something yummy for them to eat in the morning. One of the things that we have found that they really are a huge fan of is our fruit and yogurt parfaits. Those are made in-house by us, and we've been trying strawberry, pineapple, peach, blueberry, and our kids love it. So whenever we do that, we see a high spike in our students really coming in and eating that yogurt. We also are running our March, getting ready for March. So we are running in March what is called the Hang Time Basket and our Buzzer Beater Basket. And so these are two different chicken baskets. Our kids love chicken. So if we can get them to eat more items with us, we're trying to do some of those items. So the Hang Time Basket has chicken fingers, it has biscuits, it has a spicy sweet sauce that goes along with it, and it has the coleslaw. It's kind of like we're giving them that to go outside food, but it's really inside school food. Something they can easily grab, dip. They like those types of things. Another one is our chicken nuggets. It has chicken nuggets. It also has a spicy chicken. It has the celery. It has the breadstick. It gives them the complete meal all in one basket. If they don't have to pick whatever's sitting out there sometimes, they're easier to take it and actually eat it all. This one has a chipotle ranch sauce, and they like anything with sauces. So that is something we're starting to figure out. If we give them the full complete meal within the basket, they'll take everything. And so it's not as hard of a push to get them to take the fruit or the vegetable if we can incorporate it. And it saves time for them to go through the line. They have more time to actually spend in the cafeteria talking with friends and socializing. So that's some of the things we're learning and working on and implementing. Supper program has actually been very fun for me to learn. I got a chance to go around and kind of see how the supper programs work, and I am learning that they like, especially our elementary schoolers, they like anything that is like a Lunchable type item. I would have not thought that the boiled egg, the cheese sticks, the cheese cubes would be something they would actually eat. But they like those things because they're fun, they're easy, they can play with them and still pop them in their mouth all at the same time. So those are some of the things that we're really going well in those locations. As you can see, this is our fruit and yogurt cup with a granola on the top of it. They enjoy that a lot at supper program as well. Fresh eyes. So in January, we had some more Aramark directors come into the schools. We did 6 different schools, and we kind of split up, and we had 2 people per school. And we kind of just went around during the lunch, and we watched the kids who actually bring their lunch. We watched the kids who eat with us, and we got a chance to kind of talk to them. This is what I use in order to develop next year's menus and what we will roll out, and see what the kids that are bringing their lunches, what are they eating? What do they like? What can we implement in our things? I was very shocked to see that a lot of our students are eating things like seaweed in their lunch box, multi-grain crackers, lots of healthy items that I would have not expect to see in kindergartners, first graders, second graders. And we got to talk to those. That day we were actually having our muffin, cheese, and yogurt tray. And so I got to see all of the students that actually got that as an item. And in Leo is one of the schools that we visited, which is where this picture is from. We had over half of our kids eating the fruit, cheese and yogurt trays over the other items. So that shows me that these kids are really open to eating those options if we present them. So looking more into those options that we think, well, we can put this on there, they're not going to eat it. But noticing that this is the type of stuff they're even bringing in their lunches, we might be able to even capture some of those lunch students who bring their own lunches for later times, and get them to eat school lunch if we are implementing some of these other items. So that was something that we are looking to as I look at building next year's menus, to be able to implement some of those new things, some other healthier items. Another item we served tonight that actually went well is jicama. Would have not thought that would have gone over well, but because it has that little hint of sweet, they like it. Jicama sticks go over very well in our supper program. So learning those types of little hints when we throw them out there more than one time, and seeing that the kids actually, it may take them a time or two, but they are actually picking up on some of those healthier options. So Institute Day this year, another focus of mine is our teachers, our educators. A lot of the teachers that I have talked to did not previously dine with us very often. So I figured out, why don't you dine with us? What can we do to get you dining with us? Because I know in a lot of the schools, they're working towards actually sitting and having lunches with their students. And trying to, right now we have the health and wellness going on in the schools where all the teachers are trying to lose weight. And so they're wanting more healthier options. So this year for the Institute Day, instead of doing a typical booth to talk about child health, we kind of offered some different options that are both unhealthy and healthy for both those caterings that happen in the district, which we are seeing a pickup, but also for those teachers who do want the fresh fruit salads and the different things. Just that way I can kind of get to know some of the teachers and what they're looking for. It went over really well. And we were really shocked of just how much the teachers are saying we would eat with you if you offered us this. If we didn't have to wait in that long line with the students and you offered us this items, we would do that. One of the things we rolled out in the last couple of weeks is salads. Tailored salads where they call us by 9 a.m. in our middle school and they give us their name. They tell us we do a veggie salad, we do a chef salad. And they call and they tell us, I would like a salad with you guys without so-and-so. And we are having those salads ready with that teacher's name on it. So all they have to do is come to us, grab their food, and they're able to, we take care of their accounts, and they can go on. That has been one of our hugest things. I think today alone, I served over 20 teachers' salads. So this is something that we didn't know how well it would pick up, but it is picking up and it is taking off. So now I'm wondering, okay, if I order you, offer other items, especially because they are eating, a lot of them are eating at the same time as the students. So we can get them something and they can still do what they're doing with their students, still get a hot lunch or a quality size lunch, and eat with us. So they're more ordained to eat with us, and they actually eat a lot healthier when they eat with us. So that is something that we got to experience through Institute Day. So meals today. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of where we are on meals. So right now we're serving over 200,000 breakfast meals, over 300,000 lunch. We're close to 50,000 on our snacks and 14,000 with dinner. Overall, over 600,000 meals to date for this school year. So our kids are eating, they're enjoying what they're eating, and we hope to just continue with that. So upcoming. So fun new things that we're putting out in the next couple months for students are some promotions. We have Dr. Seuss's birthday coming up. I'm really excited about that. That is a fun way for us at Aramark to promote reading during our lunches. So we'll have some giveaways in our schools to promote Dr. Seuss's birthday and reading. Another one is the Slam Dunk Sauce Contest. So this is where my kitchen lead is going to be producing several different sauces to offer with our meals. And those, the most voted on, the most popular meals will actually make it to our menu. So that is one of the things the kids kind of feel like they have a hand in picking things on our menus. And then spring egg hunt sticker search. So this is where we take spring stickers of eggs, and we do it a couple times in a month, closer to the Easter time, where we stick stickers on the bottom of the trays, and the kids kind of have to hunt. Whoever gets a tray, they get a special surprise. We'll do this several different times, and we'll do them in all of our elementary schools. We might even do it in our middle school, because I'm learning that middle schoolers like that type of stuff too. So we're hoping that with that, we just kind of get the kids more intrigued in their lunchtime and make lunch a little bit more fun, because it's their calm down time when they're not having to sit and learn. So, any questions?
Board. Paul?
I really appreciate the really nice qualitative report here, but I was kind of wondering what the year-to-year participation rate is, if that's gotten better. Because we had a big bump when we went to free lunch for all. The trend was going up. I was kind of wondering from last year to this year if we have any knowledge of the rate.
We did have knowledge of the rate. The rate has dropped by 1%.
Okay.
But in researching that rate, we had a large class move to open campus compared to what they were last year.
Yeah.
So with that student change, that's something that does affect our numbers. And now that all the programs are actually running and set into place, they're no longer as new as they were. So that's why I am focusing on trying to improve the programs, because you do start to see a little, once the kids get used to it. We are noticing, we did have a couple days that also we were out, and that actually does affect us. And we missed a couple days just due to other things that were going on within the district that hindered our lunch numbers. So.
And the other question I have is how are the new facilities at Yankee Ridge working out?
They are working well. We're still sharing that space, but overall they're working well. The principal has been very good at working with my staff there as they learn the kitchen themselves. But overall, those facilities are working well. And Matt has been great at making sure that anything that is not working well, he comes in and takes care of us. So.
Thank you.
So one of the reasons that some of us voted for the all community approach was that there was some concern that the open campus was actually, even in the light of what's occurred in the last couple of weeks, the open campus was a safety issue of having students leave the campus and come back. The journey out, the journey back, and the time away was sometimes creating some safety issues or well-being issues as we go into the rest of the day. And so I'm going to give you a chance to maybe expand a little bit on the impact that perhaps we're having by keeping more of the juniors and seniors on campus for lunch as opposed to away. And you may not have been here long enough to be able to say anything about it. So I don't want to put you on the spot. If it's something you need to defer and get back to me later about, that'd be fine.
I think the impact that does have on us at this time is very significant, just because of what I have watched and how they are able to leave the cafeteria, and you really can't get a good handle on who's staying, who's not, who's juniors, who's seniors. It has been discussed, and I think having them on campus, just because it is easier to safety-wise, but I cannot go into great detail on that because I am so new and I am still learning. So I think that is something that I would definitely be willing to look more into on how it impacts.
Good. And I'm not sure what your background is. Did you work at other school systems before working
Yes,
here?
I actually came from Missouri. I've been with Aramark for over 4 years. And so I came from this is Open campus is new to me because I have not dealt with open campus in a K through 12 level. Everyone has always been completely closed campus.
And so do you have observations from your past experience? Some things that maybe you'd like to see done differently at Urbana that you've observed elsewhere that work extremely well and maybe we should be thinking about?
I honestly would feel better looking more into that without responding to that on the spot.
That's fine. I think we would be a school system that would be open to hearing if there are any further recommendations and things that you might have seen elsewhere that worked astoundingly well elsewhere and that we should be thinking about.
Okay. I will definitely work on that.
Thank you.
2 points, John, if I could,
Yes, I'm
please.
sorry.
Wanted to point out the Community Eligibility Program, the program that allows us to feed all of our kids free. We are actually ending the 4th year of that program, so we have to reapply this April. So we are very hopeful that we're going to get that, be qualified again, but I just wanted the board to realize that we are going through that application process again this year.
Do we meet the basic
Yeah.
requirements
Yeah.
still? I assume. we
I
do.
don't foresee any problems. But I just want to let you know that that process is starting. And the other process that we are right in the middle of right now is the bid process. This is a bid year for food service as well. So much of that bid is pre-spec'd out by the state. You have to follow their specs. You can go in and just change very little. They have to approve everything. So it's very mandated as far as what's in the bid. There's very little that we can change. But if the board has anything that they are interested in as far as number of entrees we serve or anything like that, now would be the time. I mean, we do a lot already. I mean, we serve, I think, 11 entrees at the high school, 4 entrees at the elementary. So, I mean, we are already doing quite a bit. And anything more than that, obviously, would increase costs. I'm sure the minimum wage may have some impact on our food service going forward as well. And also, I think because this year, before the minimum wage came in, we were already going to get an alternate. This is based on our current staffing, and we wanted to do an alternate with maybe bumping up the rate just a little bit. Because one of the biggest challenges, and Natalie would agree with us, we've faced this for years, is just staffing and trying to keep people there. And that's, again, based on the wages that we're able to pay, which is it's all based on how we put that bid out. We tell them what we want that wage to be. So we're going to do it both ways. We wanted to give an option. I don't want to commit the board to spending a lot more money on a food service bid if that's not what we want, but we wanted to at least see what that bid would come out. So we're going to have two options there for that. So that will be hopefully going out. We have to send it to the state board here very soon. It's going to be possibly 30 days with them before they can approve it, and then we'll be going out and coming back to the board with the recommendation hopefully by May.
All right. And I think also for the purpose of viewing audience that this board is, we've got 2 buildings to go. But as we've gone through and redone our buildings, we have put a lot of money into into updating and making sure that our cafeteria, our food operations are in good facilities, good place to begin, so that we can serve the best, the highest quality food possible.
So
All
thanks,
right.
Natalie. Appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
I wanted to make sure that the public understood. Oh, you can clap. Thank you very much. Make sure that the public understands that Natalie nor President Dimmitt proposed closing the high school campus for lunch. I know how rumors tend to start. That was not stated. I want to make sure that that's clear. It was a question. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Next, ISBE Illinois Empower. Jim Corder.
And Todd Taylor.
Todd, sorry.
Quickly, the principals who are involved in writing these work plans are here tonight too, that you are welcome to ask questions of at the end, but Todd and I would like to take this time to update you on what's been happening over the last couple of months through the new Illinois Empower process.
Which one? This one? Oh, let's just go down, okay.
Based on the summative designations from the state board that were made in late October
We need lights again.
regarding our school report card, the designations were presented to you in November by Dr. Owen. The 4 new designations at the state level are lowest performing, underperforming, which is underperforming for 1 or more student groups, commendable, and exemplary. Any school who was rated in this new system as lowest performing or underperforming has to complete both a self-evaluation using the Illinois Quality Framework, and they must develop a school work plan that has to be approved by the local Board of Education, which is what is in your packet tonight for your review and possible approval by March 5th. Just as a reminder, the new state designations come from these different categories at the elementary level, which includes K through 8. 50% of the designation comes from student growth, 10% from proficiency in the language arts exam, 10% proficiency in the math exam, 5% of English language learner progress toward proficiency. The climate survey is 5%, and absenteeism, not truancy, but absenteeism is counted at a 20% rate. I'm only highlighting the elementary portion of the new designation system because those are the schools that you have in front of you this evening. Once this piece happens, then these scores are converted to a mathematical formula that's weighted and converted to an index score. And then the index scores are sorted by every school in the state, and that's how they get to these designations.
And just to anticipate a question, if you want to just go back one slide just quickly. The growth and proficiency is figured on PARC from one year to the next, so it's based on this. It's not based on any local assessment we're doing. It's based on state testing.
So we have 2 schools who received designations for underperforming for 1 or more student groups. That was UMS and Yankee Ridge. And 2 schools, Dr. Williams and Wiley School, received designation of the lowest performing under this new rating system. School teams, which were led by the building principals and supported by central office staff, and an external facilitator from AIR, engaged in the self-evaluation and reflection on the Illinois Quality Framework and in completing the initial draft of the work plans. Those dates were December 21st and February the 5th, so we are on a really short turnaround time.
Mother Nature also did us no favors because our initial date to work on the work plans was January 30th. Which, as we remember, was a cold day. So we had to scramble, get another day set up with subs and plans. And thank you to our principals and teams for being flexible on that. That was not an easy thing to pull off, setting up a new date a week later, but we were able to do that.
And we have been in consultation with our school support manager that is assigned to us from ISB. Her most recent visit with us was February the 14th, where she sat with each of our school principals involved in this whole process and provided comments on their work plans and suggested some revisions. You'll find out why in just a second. We designated this year as a planning year, which gives us some time to gear up, which is a good thing because as the state timelines are playing out, I personally feel like we're behind the 8 ball a little bit on this, but I commend our teachers and our principals for working diligently to meet all the state timelines and to tolerate some ambiguity as we work our way through the process. The funding that will be provided through this process is not the sole funding that will be used to help improve our schools and help support our students and our teachers. We will use title funds, district funds, IDEA funds, in addition to the new funds that are allocated through this process. The confusing piece of this for many people is that the title for these funds is Title 1003A, so please don't confuse that with our regular Title I funds. That's just how it comes down to us from the state. and these funds will be used to supplement, they may not supplant anything that we are currently doing or have planned. All plans are reviewed by the state board. In this instance, our school support manager provided an initial review and came on February 14th to work with us on making some necessary revisions. We have been granted an extension to March the 5th because of the circumstances around our unique needs in this district. March 5th will be the date that we are asking for you to approve the school work plans before we can submit them to the state board. We do not expect you to act on them tonight. They are very lengthy. They are very specific to each school. It will require careful review, but in order for us to have the money released to us from the state board, you all have to approve it by March the 5th, and then we submit it to the state board for final approval of all of the activities, interventions, strategies, and the expenditure allocations that are in the work plan. To date, there are no expenditure allocations written in those work plans because our school support manager will be returning after you have approved them and after they have been submitted to the state board to modify the expenditure allocations. So we are not making any preliminary modifications because we would have to modify them and amend them based on her recommendation. So she will come to us and work with us on that at a later time, shortly after March 5th, we hope. As you look through those lengthy documents, you'll find that they have 4 sections. There is a section that is data analysis, one that's the needs assessment, which is the Illinois Quality Framework. One question relates to identifying disparities and inequities among resources. And then the last section actually gets to what are the activities and the strategies that we think we need to implement in order to help our kids get better. As you look through them, when you look at question 1, there is a mile of data that has been provided to you. Data regarding the proficiency scores, data regarding student growth scores, regarding English language learner proficiency, progress to proficiency, regarding the school climate survey, regarding our absenteeism. That's a mile of data. There is also at the end of each section a synthesis of the data that puts it in context and helps sort through all of the data that's there. So if you, as you're looking and you're trying to make a very long task manageable, I suggest that you read the synthesis section first, and then anything that you don't understand clearly from the synthesis sections, go back and find the data that supports that. So that's just a shortcut for reading these, as we've been reading many of them. Question 2 asks about resource inequities. What are the inequities between our district, our schools, and the state in terms of funding, in terms of time, in terms of materials, in terms of staffing? Those are the kinds of resources that they're looking at. One of the most glaring things that we discovered through this process is that we have, through the new funding formula, they've determined that we are at about 75% of the financial capacity, 74 actually, I said 75, I'm wrong, to meet the expectations for the kids that we have today. And I thought it bears repeating here that there are many factors that our schools were asked to consider. The one that jumped out at us most often was the financial resources, and so as you read through them, you'll see how they are addressing those things. Each school team developed a series of activities and interventions, strategies that are targeted for their specific school needs. Our school support manager was very specific that these plans are developed by the school teams and not by central office. These are specifically designed by the people who know these students best to meet the needs for their school. So each school's plan looks different. Each school's plan addresses different issues because these are very authentic to the needs as identified by those school teams and the perception of those school teams. Every work plan is specific to the school level, not the district level. And as you will see as you review those plans, the Illinois Quality Framework was a quite extensive framework for review. And we were provided with a template for the work plans that we needed to use. The work plans will exist alongside and in conjunction with their current school improvement plans. These do not replace any of the school improvement plans that we've been working on. These will exist alongside and along with those plans. A huge thank you to the building principals and a huge thank you to the staff who took the time to not just work on the days that we brought our consultants in to help us work through this, but all of the hours that they spent outside of the workday getting these ready for you to review and approve at the March 5th meeting. Yeah.
That's good. I will just say, from the time the summative designations came out was late October to now is a very quick time frame to do this kind of work. We had to, very quickly determine whether we wanted a planning year. I just wanted to point out too, in terms of a planning year, that I had to get clarification. What does that mean? It doesn't change any timelines or requirements, but again, as Jean said, that allows us an additional year to move our schools in the right direction into those upper two categories where we would like them to be. I will also say, we did need to develop a grant proposal by the end of November before we went through this process. So it's been an interesting process, and I thank Jean for jumping in with both feet. This is something that I helped get started, and it's been a group effort to get to this point.
You ready for questions? Sure. I read this very, very quick, so obviously, because I think we got this about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So a couple things. Joe, in the middle school, I noticed the statement that we're 30% local and 68% state, and I think those should be reversed.
It may have been worded the opposite way, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm of the opinion that we don't get near the level of state funding that we are supposed to get.
Yeah.
According to the state constitution.
Yeah, I had it backwards.
We'll get that.
Okay. And then, the principals are all here. I want, some of you were succinct and others were lengthy. And it didn't help that I started with the one that was the longest, which was the first one. So I thought, boy, this is a lot to wade through before coming here tonight. But in terms of the dollars, one of the proposals, and I cannot remember which one it was right now because I read them so fast, had $125,000 worth of needs identified. So is that part of the stuff that'll be pulled back out before this is submitted and then done after they get back? Or there's only one that identified costs, and that was the one.
Yeah, we have been given some preliminary allocations on paper by the state board. 2 schools have between $115,000 and $125,000 of the preliminary allocation. 1 school has $15,000 and 1 school has $30,000.
I can give you updated numbers on those. I just looked at them because they changed 3 or 4 times in terms of what the allocations were. So, yeah, the latest allocations we have, our lowest performing schools have between about $129,000 and $139,000. UMS has about $81,000. Yankee Ridge has about $33,000. So
I was way off, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That changed quickly.
So the school with the longest, most involved plan has the least amount of money to deal with it. Brian, sorry about that. Then I want to really say that I've been harping a little bit on school improvement plans that were presented, and then we're not given any follow-up to that school improvement plan. We're just presented with the next one, which doesn't relate sometimes to the first one, or certainly doesn't talk to us about the progress made under the prior one. And I actually got criticized for jumping on a new principal for that, and I didn't mean that in the least. I was just trying to indicate that this is only so much window dressing unless there's actually something done with it. And so it looks to me like this is, first off, it's numerical. The solutions aren't. Solutions oftentimes are narrative, but the measurement and how we're going to measure our progress is here. So I really appreciate the four of the buildings and the leaders that are here tonight and your staff that worked with you on this in coming up with concrete steps. The reading looked like very concrete steps that would allow us a year from now or 6 months, whenever the time frame is, which I missed, but will allow us to take another look at this and determine if these things that we're talking about doing are making a difference. Because if something's not making a difference, I want it pushed aside and get something else in there that's going to make a real difference. And so I recognize, as someone who used to write policy reports and measurable results, that that's some of the most difficult things to do. And you really lay it on the line when you do that, because there's no hiding behind language. It's in the numbers. And so I want to thank you and congratulate people on what looks like a pretty darn extensive amount of work done in a very, very brief amount of time. And I hope it will be helpful to the district. Any other? Oh, Peggy.
Can I just clarify the funding availability that you just referenced? Is this all new funds that we would get potentially from the Illinois Empower program, I guess? And I didn't write it down fast enough, but you said, Todd, that the lowest performing are, have the option potential to receive $129,000 to $139,000 per year, or per this 4-year?
That is for this fiscal year. We have not been giving allocations for future years, but there's been some indications there will be additional dollars allocated in the future for this.
So that's for the lowest performing, and then the next designation has smaller sums of money that they have. Okay. And then my second.
So by fiscal year, you're talking about the remaining 2 or 3 months of school.
Yeah, and we can get an extension through the end of August, I believe. Yes.
Okay.
I share your thought on that, John. Yeah.
That's a good thing. And then my second question is a little bit, but I'm mindful of a presentation that Jean, I think you made a couple meetings back about that referenced our erroneous data entry and the implications that had on funding and on designations. And I'm wondering, are the 4 designations that you're included in this report, is it possible that they are based on erroneous data? Maybe they don't belong there, maybe other schools belong there, you're just speculating, of course.
And the answer is, we simply don't know. You'll find when you read one that there are some mistakes in the absenteeism rate for that school. Whether that would have tipped the balance for them one way or another into a different designation, I can't say. But we know for a fact that that portion of the reporting was erroneous for them.
All right.
I think it's also important to note that the data that you're speaking of that was supposedly pulled in November wasn't. It was pulled in February, and we had cleaned up the data by then as far as some of the evidence-based formula for funding was concerned. I think that's part of her question, possibly.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that the absenteeism data was cleared up at that time. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
More questions.
Paul.
The 74% number really stands out, but I was wondering if we have any knowledge of how that compares to other districts' percentage in terms of other LUDA districts or other districts in the state. If 74 could be the best of the state for all we know, right?
You can look that up on Illinois report card.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a school compare feature.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's certain that 74% is not reflective of the local tax. My feeling is that at the local level, this community strongly supports its public schools. The downfall in moving us from 100% down to 74% is that the state constitution says that the state of Illinois is supposed to provide 50% of the funding for public education, and we are at 68%, almost 68% local, a portion of federal, and so our state is probably around 25%. Federal doesn't provide that much. So that means that the state's providing roughly half the funding that they should be providing to a district of this nature. So it is upsetting that we are not properly funded, make no mistake about it. But I don't want our community to think that this is a prelude to be talking about asking for more money from the local community, because our local community is doing its share. Any other questions? If board members have not had a chance to read this, have a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Or two.
It is mind-boggling, and I skimmed it, and it was rough skimming it in 45 minutes. To really study it, you really need to spend some time with it.
And if you could share these slides too, because I know we got the work plans, but we didn't get this background, because I had a lot of just background questions that you answered perfectly, but if you could send that ahead.
Yes, we can do that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, you're up next to discuss O&M deficit fund balance.
Now we're ready. Well, good evening, everyone. I think when Marcellus and I presented the budget to the board in September, there was a request at that time based on the fund balances that we, in the future, have a discussion about what to do about the O&M fund balance, because it has been deficit for quite some time. It's not changing, and we need to address that. So that's what we're here to do tonight, is to present some options that we came up with. So what we're going to do first is kind of review our FY19 estimated ending fund balances. This is just going over our budgeted fund balances that we had back in September. Then we'll also review some of the options that we came up with. You have to understand, though, that there are many, many other options to this and variations of these three options that we could do. So we're just picking three to go over with you, and then we can, probably by the end of the night, you might know which one that we're kind of looking at. But we will answer questions at that time and see what direction the board wants to go. So those three options are going to be, option one is use of our rolling working cash in conjunction with an increasing of our tax levy in the O&M fund to increase the revenues there. Option two would be to issue new bonds. The money would directly go into O&M. And then option three would be a permanent transfer from other funds that have positive fund balances right now. So we'll go through those, and Marcellus is going to take the first. But first, don't jump too far ahead, Carol. At your place, I presented the 2018-19. You guys are used to seeing this. This is what it looks like on the screen, but I thought having it closer for you might be helpful, because this is pretty far away and hard to read. So at your place, you can see where the fund balances are currently. One thing I wanted to point out, as we're looking at these fund balances, the one largest fund balance that has a positive balance is our education fund. But as you know, even though we have a $5 million balance in our ed fund, that's still only about 12% of our revenues. And in our strategic plan years ago, we said we wanted to have our goal was to have a 25% fund balance to revenue ratio. So we're only halfway there with the $5 million that we have in our ed fund. If we were to get to the 25%, that would be close to $10.8 million that we would need. So I wanted to point that out. So keep that handy. You'll be needing that as we walk through this. And for just another way to look at this in a graph form, you can see based on all of the fund balances as of projecting again to June 30th of this year, where we think we're going to be based on the budget. And this is based on the budgeted expenditures that we approved back in September. So it doesn't take into account any of the additions that we have had since then. That's the next thing I am now working on is I know that's the next question the board's going to ask is where do you think we're going to be in June? So I'm working on that, and that will be coming at a future board meeting. So right now, these are the fund balances that we budgeted. And as you can see, when you're looking across the top, out of our 10 ongoing funds that we have, there's only 6 of them that are positive. And several of those, life safety, tort, facility sales tax, we can't touch those. Those are for specific purposes, so we can't be moving money out of there to help O&M when those monies were levied for a specific purpose. And the construction working cash bond that has $3.2 million, that's finishing out the Yankee Ridge project, as well as our rolling working cash bonds, which we will be talking a little bit about. But the majority of that is finishing out the Yankee Ridge project there too. So really, as you can see, the working cash fund, the $7 million working cash fund, that's our internal bank that we always have had from the last 25 years. It's stayed at about $7 million. I mean, so we've had that. It's not grown. It's just the money we use that during the year when all these funds are negative, that $7 million is loaned out to O&M, debt service, transportation, and IMRF. It's loaned out to those funds so that we can continue to pay the bills and the things that come out of those funds. So in theory, we don't really have a $7 million working cash, except for at June 30th, when we repay those loans. As soon as that's repaid, we turn around and loan it right back out to all these funds. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And the other thing that I provided at your place was a 10-year history. I mean, you might say, wow, how did we get here, Carol? We've accumulated a $3.7 million O&M fund balance deficit. But as you can see, we've had that for the last 8 years. You know, that was created long before Matt got here. I just had to throw that in. But it was something that's been here for quite some time. And it's had years where we've gone up and had years where it's gotten better. But a lot of it was due to overspending during construction times when we were purchasing properties around Leo that we didn't have in our bonds that we sold. I mean, those were things that had to come from somewhere, and they ended up coming from O&M. So it's and just years of overspending too in the O&M fund, just expenditures exceeding our revenues. So that history was something I wanted you to have tonight, just so you could see.
But it's also due to our tax cap strategy.
Exactly, yeah. When we went into tax caps, the board's direction was to that we wanted to fund the ed fund, and the O&M and transportation were the two funds that were going to take the hit. So in those years when we didn't have enough, we were tax capped and we didn't have enough revenue, we always made sure to put what we could put into the ed fund to try to balance that, and then transportation and O&M were continuing to deficit spend because of that. So part of it was a planned reaction to tax caps by the board. So the other thing I wanted to point out about this history too is you can see in 2010-11, we had that's when we had the $2 million in budget cuts, if you were around back then. We had $2 million in budget cuts in the ed fund. That's where we had a big improvement that year. And then in 2014-15 in the ed fund, that's where we had the increase for about $3.5 million is when Carl came back on the settlement, absorbed, and we had to pay back half of that money, but the other half of that money that we got to keep from that settlement was absorbed into our fund balances then. So that's when you saw that big increase across the board for all of the funds at that point. The majority of it in the ed fund though. And the other thing I was going to say about the working cash is that $7 million tonight on the board agenda a little bit later, you had this memo that said we were making the last couple loans, from one of them to O&M and one to transportation. That's using up the last of our working cash. So that's $7 million that we have after these two loans is gone. And that happens every year. I mean, it's loaned out, and then usually around February, March, the working cash is gone, and then we're waiting on that next tax, the first tax receipts to come in at the end of May. So that's why I'm saying in theory that $7 million is not really in the working cash fund except for one day of the year, and that's in June 30th when we repay those loans. It's that one snapshot, it's there, and then we start loaning it back out again. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marcellus to talk through the first option. And I have to say, Marcellus has been interning under me to get his CSBO, and he did this was one of his projects I gave him. So do this analysis. So he did a great job, and he'll talk through what he did here.
Well, thank you, Carol, and good evening. We have a few options to consider for potentially balancing the O&M fund. But before I get into option one, I'd like to say Carol and I have spent several weeks preparing a projected tax worksheet that allows us to create what-if scenarios to help illustrate the fund balances based on levy rates, projected revenues and expenses, and market assumptions. And the market assumptions that you see on the slide there are actually built into the worksheet. The first market assumption is new business construction would be at $6 million each year. Then the second is property assessed valuation is at a 2% growth each year. And the estimated CPI is at 2.1% each year. We did not include the worksheet in this PowerPoint because the document is too busy and detailed to fit on the slide. So nevertheless, we do have a copy of the worksheet if you're interested. I'd like to move to the next slide, and it actually highlights the option one scenario to balance O&M. The scenario includes an increase in the levy amount and a transfer of capital outlay expenses to the working cash fund each year over a 5-year period. The projection details include an increase in the levy rate from 59 cents to 70 cents, a transfer of capital outlay expenses to working cash of approximately $325,000 per year, and an overall 3% increase in expenditures each year over the next 5 years. The increase in the levy would add approximately $700,000 per year in revenue, which is $3.5 million over the 5-year projection. The transfer of the capital outlay expenditures from O&M to the working cash fund is approximately $325,000 per year, which is $1.6 million over that 5-year period. So the combination of the increase in the levy and the transfer of the expenses would result in an estimated $5.1 million swing towards balancing the O&M fund. And here are some of the outcomes, advantages, and disadvantages of that scenario. The outcome of the scenario is that we would have a projected 5-year O&M ending fund balance of about $500,000 in 2023. The advantages is the O&M fund and the working cash fund would have projected positive ending fund balances in that 5-year period. But there are a few disadvantages. One disadvantage is it's irreversible once we file the tax levy. And then also, obviously, the $325,000 that we are transferring each year would reduce our working cash. And obviously, the outcome is not certain. Outcomes basically depend on market assumptions and conditions. So those are a few of the disadvantages if we were to choose this option. There's also a potential impact with this option on the education fund, but before I go into those impacts, I would like to say if we increase our levy in one fund, then we may, depending on market conditions, have to decrease our levy in other funds. So if we have a tax rate increase overall of 5 cents, and we increase our O&M fund by 11 cents, then we've overspent by 6 cents. And so it has to come from somewhere. So therefore, we've evaluated various possibilities. And based on the current fund balances that Carol had shown in the previous slide, we identified the education fund as the healthiest fund balance to sustain a potential decrease in the levy amount. So, with that being said, if we were to increase our O&M fund by 11 cents, which would be 70 cents for the upcoming year, there is a potential nickel decrease in our education fund if that's the fund we chose to do. We chose to take the decrease. And then also a potential reduction in levy opportunities in the education fund over the next 5 years, meaning any increases would pretty much go to O&M versus the education fund. So overall, the reduction in the levy opportunities in the education fund could lead to a reduced balance in that 5-year period.
And to demonstrate that, Preston's gonna like this, we wanted to use the cup scenario. Not pots, we're using cups tonight. So, many of you know we get an aggregate tax levy. So assume this is our aggregate tax levy. That's the most amount of money that we're gonna get as a district in our taxes. You can spread that out into all these 10 different funds. I've only got 4 cups, so we're gonna pretend this is 10 cups. You can spread that out, and you can put more in one, a little bit in that, and a little bit in this one. And once this is all gone and it's all spread out, that's all you got. Now, if you're going to take money from this one, you can put it over here, but that means this one's going to have less. So that's kind of what he's trying to say, is that we only have so much money in all of our funds. Tax caps does an aggregate levy that can increase by 2.5% or CPI, whichever's less, every year. So we may get a little bit of an increase to be able to put it all. We've been putting the majority of that in the ed fund. Well, if we end up taking some of that and putting it over in O&M, obviously what we're trying to point out here is something's going to give. You're basically robbing from Peter to pay Paul. You're taking from somebody else. So, you like that, Preston? That was for you. Yeah, I didn't have any pots. I just had cups. So, anyway, that's what that means.
And so now I'd like to turn it back to Carol for option 2.
So option 2, I was real excited about, thinking, wow, this is a simple, easy way. Let's just sell some bonds and put some money in O&M and be done with it. But forgot the part about, again, we're tax capped, that debt service extension base, which we have, which is now our maximum amount that we have for any type of debt, has been maxed out with the Yankee Ridge construction. We have built into that our rolling working cash that we can do every 3 years, which is basically $1 million a year that we have for that rolling working cash, but we don't have room for anything else. So this one immediately went away. So I put it out there just in case anybody was wondering. I mean, what you could, if you really like this option, we can accelerate doing the working cash bonds. You could sell another, $5 million maybe next year. It just means it's going to, repayment of those is going to go out toward the end after the 3 years. You can only handle $1 million a year every year.
And the longer you borrow, the more expensive the borrowing.
It doesn't make sense to do it when you're just trying to repay these this quick. So I put that out there just so you could see we thought about it, but it's not one that we would. It's accelerating things, but I wouldn't recommend it. There's a cost to selling bonds, and it wouldn't be worth it. So option 3, you can switch to the next slide. Is a permanent transfer. So if you remember back to the slide with all of the graphic illustration of all the funds, taking money from one fund and doing a permanent transfer, we've basically been doing interfund loans, so we're doing informal transfers during the year already. What this would do would just be, instead of playing this interfund loan game, we could just transfer $4 million, $5 million, whatever amount we want to transfer from working cash to O&M and fix the problem immediately. So you can do that in one lump sum. You can do it $1 million this year, $1 million. I mean, there's really no reason not to do it in one lump sum, I don't think. You might as well you can just do it.
But if working cash funds are ephemeral, they're not time-wise. They're not after we get done making these loans tonight, there is no working cash funds to transfer.
But I would not have to be loaning out $4 million to O&M. If you look at the balances on that memo, it says how much is loaned out to each fund. There's $4 million of that 7 that's loaned out to O&M right now. So we wouldn't be making, we would have $3 million loaned out to the rest of the funds. That $4 million would be gone and permanently transferred to O&M. So we would only be loaning out $3 million to the remaining funds that are negative. So we would have, it basically is just doing away with all these interfund loans that we're doing all year long and saying, let's just give $4 million or permanently transfer $4 million over to O&M and then have $3 million to loan out to the remaining funds that would now still be negative. So the outcome of that obviously is it balances O&M immediately. It takes care of it at this point in time. It brings that balance back to zero. The advantages, obviously, flexibility. You know, we could decide to do this in as many amounts as we want to, or one lump sum. And if we decide this is a bad idea, we can always permanently transfer it back a year from now or whenever we want to do it. It's just a board resolution that you'd have to pass to take care of that. Doesn't have to worry about the tax rate, making any changes in that. So very simple. Disadvantages, obviously, it rearranges existing fund balances, may create fund balance problems for other funds in the future, potentially. But the bottom line is none of these options we're presenting fixes it moving forward. It fixes it as of one point in time. So unless we still have the problem that if we're continuing to have expenses that exceed our revenues in O&M, we're going to if we move $4 million there and get us back to zero and continue to deficit spend, we're going to we'll start eating back ourselves into a deficit again, just like we did 10, 15 years ago. So we still have to address the structural deficit that we have in O&M. This does not fix that problem. It just brings us out of debt today. We will have to address that when we talk about the budget, when we talk about the tax levy. I mean, that's something that in the future we might have to start moving more of our tax levy in the future to O&M to make sure that we're balancing that. As John mentioned, we've had a board direction to try to balance the ed fund as much as possible, and O&M and transportation are taking the hit. We might have to have a new policy that would say in the future, whatever increase we get in our aggregate extension should be shared proportionately through all the funds. We've not done that in the past, but that's something that we can discuss. And again, probably yet this year in our budget discussions when we start talking about next year's budget, and potentially you could do it, we will get our tax rates for the 2018 levy will be coming out early April usually. So if the board wants to start adjusting anything this year, we could potentially do that in April. I would need to know that because I have like a 7-day window where I can make those adjustments and have to get them back to the county clerk. So I would have to know in March if we're going to do that. And again, if you're going to start that this year, that means that the budget that you approved is going to be off, because then the budget that we approved with certain assumptions in place for what the tax rates were going to be, if that's going to be different, then expect our budget's going to be different, or the ending result's going to be different from our budget. So, can you guess which one that at least Carol likes of the options? So I mean, to me that's the simplest approach. But again, as we stated, there are so many different ways we could do this. I mean, so many different. We kind of went to 3, honed in on 3, but there are very many extremes within, especially the tax rate one. You could do that one so many different ways.
So you ready for questions? I'm ready.
Sure.
I'm the one that brought this up, and so Normally, I let other board members talk first, but I'm going to charge right in. This is not just an O&M problem, it's a problem of all of our funds. We have artificially inflated the income into the education fund. As a matter of fact, there's a difference between levy and rate. And levy is the total amount of money that we're allowed to get, and the rate is what the state allows us to, and the state and the voters, local voters, allow. Our last approved rate maximum, approved by our local voters, pre-tax caps, was $2.97, $2.99. We've got some memory issues. One person says $2.97, one person says $2.99. Our last year tax rate for education fund, because when tax caps come into play, the county clerk that assigns dollars out doesn't look at the local approved rates anymore, but looks at the composite rate, the total altogether. But the last rate for education fund was $3.99. The statutory maximum is $4. Tax rate or no tax rate. The statutory maximum is $4 for education fund. So we're at a point where it would be questionable, and I suppose there could be a debate that has not been settled in any court cases anywhere, because for a district to approach the $4 maximum, when I go around the state and talk to other school board members and they find out that we're at $4, they are astounded, because we're a rare district, and that's for that's for K-12 districts only.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Correct something? We found out, actually through this process, that changed 2 years ago. We no longer have a rate maximum in the ed fund. And we called and
Changed from
confirmed
80
that.
years ago.
2 years ago. Wasn't it 2 years ago?
I believe that's correct.
There's no rate limit at all in the ed fund.
I was
And
unaware.
we're okay, because we were, even though we were maxing out at 4, we were putting it in the special ed levy, so we were still getting in the ed fund.
But
Remember, 'cause-
my point is that, okay, so maybe we don't have the ironclad limits, but the point still remains
Right.
that we have artificially starved all of our other funds in favor of allowing our education fund to grow. And we're at a point where we really need to be thinking about, if by any chance, with new legislature, that the state tax cap law is done away with, we would be probably in a bit of a worse position then than we are today, because our voters have not approved a rate beyond $2.99. And we would have to revert back to $2.99, which would take a significant amount of money coming in, new money coming in out of our education fund. And so I would like us to look at the fact that we probably need to stabilize, make current the amount of money going into our ed fund, and all of the growth in our rate that happens under the tax cap maximum levy is then sent to a different fund. Because whether the tax cap money goes into, there are certain funds you can borrow from, and there are certain funds you cannot borrow from. And education fund and O&M fund happen to be pretty much interchangeable. You can move money from one to the other, back and forth. I'm a little unsure as to whether you can move money out of O&M into working cash, but maybe you can. I know you can out of ed fund into working cash. I don't think this is a problem that we can solve in 2 or 3 years. This is a multiple year, long-term project. And we have to come to grips with the fact that this district has not borne any programmatic pain, any expenditure pain due to tax caps. We have due to the overall amount of revenue that we've got versus the overall amount of expenditures. But perhaps it's time that we begin to undo the starving of our, it's not just transportation and O&M, it also involves IMRF, which also, compared to the size of expenditures, the negative balance in it is proportionately still pretty significant. But I think we need to be talking about the fact that the natural growth of income for a while has to go to these funds that have negative balances as opposed to the funds that have positive balances. And it can be a long-term, gradual process, which I think then would minimize the pain. I see a tremendous problem with reducing working cash back to $3 million because having been on the board long enough and gone through those budget cutting time periods, those would have been even more extreme had we not had working cash available to us to see us through until the point of new taxes coming in. I do not want us to have to face in the month of March the idea of issuing tax anticipation warrants, which we got pretty close to 1 year out of the last, since tax caps have been put in place. There was 1 year where we got really pretty close to having to do that.
That's not really going to change, though, because bottom line is we still have the same amount of money. It's $7 million. It's just rearranging where
What
that
I'm
is.
saying is
So-
we need to retard our spending in all of our funds to more closely balance our revenue, rather than allowing one fund to go unscathed with unlimited spending increases, it seems like, in favor of starving our other funds. And then us having to sit here and talk about the fact that we don't have money in O&M to make a repair. We have to go to borrowed money to make the repair. Or maintain the proper staffing or maintain the proper expenditure levels in O&M. This should not be an O&M burden. This is a district-wide burden amongst all of our funds, with the exception of the funds that are designated and have very tightly controlled revenue and very tightly controlled expenditures.
Yeah. My only point is that if we had done this 4 years ago and moved $4 million to O&M, we still have the same amount of money. So it wouldn't have caused us to go outside to borrow to make it through. It wouldn't have.
Well, we don't know, because we've not done with the year yet, and we're hoping that we can get through this year without any further.
We will. Based on our cash flow analysis, we should be fine.
With the requests for added expenditures and the added money we're going through this year.
The state's paying us a lot better than they used to.
That's good to hear. But our balance should still be, all funds should share in the burden. That's whether, and I'm not advocating moving $4 million all at once, because quite honestly, I don't see that as you put it, hopefully we get through the next 2 or 3 years then before working cash is rebuilt back up, that we don't need to borrow more than $3 million. And that's not a bet that I'd be willing to take.
Yeah, working cash is not going to build back up. It's stayed at $7 million for the last 20 years. If we move $4 million out, it's going to stay at $3 million for the next 20 years, because it's not.
The only way to build it back up is to, once again, take tax revenue from some other fund and put it back into working cash.
We have basically levied the very, very minimum in that fund, just to maintain it, because we were afraid if we stopped it completely and then started back up again under tax caps, we weren't sure if they would allow us to start doing it again. So we've kept something in there just to kind of keep it open, but it's not grown.
Even to the point of, we've moved the interest that most districts put into working cash fund to allow for normal cost of living increases in the amount of working cash you need. We have transferred that permanently to the education fund. Once again, another example of where we have damaged other funds in favor of the education fund. And even moving, I can't remember what that amounts to, it's 120-some thousand a year or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much. It might be. It's a lot smaller than you would think.
But even directing that to O&M as opposed to
Another option.
to the education fund And if we take a look at the growth in our revenue, let's just assume for the minute, because my mindset's on it, do we have to stick to that $4 rate in the education fund, which is extremely liberal compared to almost all other school districts in the state of Illinois? If we keep to that and allow the revenue growth to accrue to the other funds that are in deficit, it might take 8 years to get it done instead of 4 years or 10 years to get it done, but at least it's moving in the right direction. And it doesn't hurt the education fund that much. That's my 2 cents. Anyone else? I thank you for your presentation. I'm sorry. Thank you for the presentation and the alternatives, because it does open our eyes to what is possible. But this board member would be looking for ways to do this that doesn't cause immediate disruption to the rest of the budget. A significant large disruption might cause minor disruption. That's the alternative I would be looking for.
I think if you basically looked at taking money out of one of the funds in order to take care of O&M over maybe a 8 to 10 year time period in order to pay it back, might be a little more palatable for the board, or at least this board possibly, instead of just the one large amount. I think it's something, but then again, you're gonna have to stick with it, because you can't, $300,000 or $400,000 a year, and then you're spending $1.5 million because you need to add something. So those are, I mean, you're going to have to really stick with a budget in that O&M as well, and be cognizant of that as you pay it down. Because somewhere I remember us trying to do this at one point, somewhere back in the past. I remember that, and quite honestly, I don't think it lasted too long, because things happen.
Yeah, I think the year we made 2 million in cuts in the ed fund, there was a 200,000 maybe that we made in O&M at that time. So O&M's had cuts, but again, over the years, when things break, you got to fix them. So I mean, stuff happens. You got to have things working. Some things can be put off, but some things can't.
But I think if we come up with a plan to try to pay it down, maybe $300,000 or $400,000 a year, and stick with it, maybe we'll be able to get that done.
That's going to take 10 years probably.
Yeah, I mean, you can always, move it back, but I don't think anyone wants to do it like, I know you like that, put the $4 million in.
I think it's easy, but like I said, there are a million different options within that. You can do, it's just so many different ways you can do it, so.
It's taken us 10 years to accumulate the 3.7 million, 2.7 million of the exactly 10 years to do 2.7.
I kind of remember a lot of it coming with buying those buildings around Leo myself.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it.
Significant chunk.
That's part of it, but that's not multiple millions of dollars. Multiple millions of dollars has been caused by starving the fund of revenue.
Well, it was 3.7 million negative 3.7 million back in 2012. Same
as
it is today.
I would say, could we look at the rate, the O&M tax rate in '09 versus the O&M tax rate in '19 versus the education fund rate in '09 and the education fund rate in '19, and they're on your charts. They're on your.
I have one, but I don't have that chart with me.
Yeah, I know you don't have it, but I'm just saying, if we look at that, I think we'll find that there's been a significant amount of growth in the education fund rate as compared to the rates in O&M, transportation, or in IMRF.
Yep. So is there additional information the board wants to see? I mean, I could bring that back.
The rates.
As far as what direction you want me to go. I mean, you wanted to see.
And I concur with what Preston's talking about. This needs to be a long-term, gradual process, and not try to do this in one step. Because one step will be horribly disruptive to some other budgets.
So I did present 70 cents. There is option to levy more. We can levy up to 75 cents.
If that rate, if the $4 applies, does the 75 cents provide?
Yes, 75 cents still.
Only the $4 has been eliminated.
That one went away. Yeah, it was news to me. It's been on that chart forever, every year when our tax rate comes out.
Right.
And all of a sudden it disappeared and I
And
didn't
it's
even
been a
notice.
state law since the early 1900s. And that was done away with without much knowledge.
Yeah.
Because that
It
statute,
wasn't very.
that'd be a change in state law, and I have not read that in all the publications we get about changes in state law.
Yeah, kept quiet about that one, I guess, yeah.
No one's talked about that.
They talked about it in his class.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so we could use the worksheet to match levy in O&M and just take it over a longer period of time. And we could also throw in the interest from working cash that you talked about of 120,000.
Yeah, whatever the figure is.
Yeah.
Whatever that amount is, and that may balance
Over time. Over time, it
over
should
that
lead us
8
to a
to
point
10
of
year
balance.
period.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
But what you're saying is you're then going to be deficits, you're already deficit spending in ed fund. You will be deficit spending more in the education fund unless we make cuts.
Well, you're pretty close to balancing. You're at deficit spending by 118,000 out of 3.6.
I'm looking at Fund 10. Don't look at the grant fund. That throws it off. Just look at Fund 10.
Just the top line.
Yep.
That's what I was looking at, the black print.
You're seeing.
Current year,
Oh, you're
current
looking at
year
O&M.
surplus deficit in O&M is a
Oh.
negative 118,000.
But I'm saying, I'm saying your ed fund is going to be deficit spending more. If you're now moving tax revenues out of the ed fund over to O&M, that 600,000 deficit in the ed fund is going to increase.
I understand that, and when this came up and when I brought it up, it's because we have been not very budget attentive for a while now in terms of adding expenditures. If we take a look at the pattern of expenditures in ed fund, the expenditures have been growing rapidly. Total amount spent. If we look at a 5-year analysis, we have been ratcheting up our expenditures pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, just to push back on that a little bit, I mean, the ed fund is essentially all our personnel costs, and I don't think anyone would argue that we're overpaying our staff or we hire too many staff.
I'm not arguing overpayment,
No, I know
but
you're
I
not,
might be
but-
arguing the number of staff that we're paying.
Or that too, I don't know. I mean, we, would like smaller class sizes and all that. So, I mean, I understand your argument that, the ed fund is, our protection of the ed fund is starved of other funds, but I think, all of us, many of us, believe that we could do more with more personnel and higher paid personnel and smaller class sizes and all that. So finding other ways to kind of move dollars around so we can get rid of some of these deficits over many years, I think would be good. But I'm just wondering too, I mean, the O&M, I mean, I know it's been that's been the status for the last 10 years, but that's also when we really ramped up our facility work, right? I mean, that's when we started, with great relish, working on all the elementaries in the middle school and high school. I mean, so we'll be finishing up our facility planning in the next, 5 years maybe, and hopefully finish up our 2 elementaries. And I know there'll be other projects, but hopefully that will abate a little bit, right? I mean,
I think so.
because that's been the biggest time of facility planning, which has really taxed that fund.
Matt may disagree. There's still a lot of deferred maintenance out there that
Yeah,
we're
no,
not
that's
doing
true. And taking care of our buildings is primary. No one wants to work in a building that's falling apart, and and our kids learning in buildings that are falling apart. But our people come, first. And so.
I
Well,
think
some of
this is
the-
a stimulating conversation. We
Yes.
still
Okay.
got a lot on this agenda.
Thank you,
And I
Preston.
would love to have you
Okay.
come back. But we
love
have
to.
some teachers that are still here that
Yes,
are gonna
that's
have to be up and about in a few hours. So if we
Yeah.
could kind of
Sure.
move it along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're
very
done, as long as there's no other questions. But you know where to find us if there are.
Other board members' questions? Next for our report is UMS, after I just talked about bodies. UMS lunchroom extra supervision.
Sure, you're gonna get more.
Yeah. We should have gone before Carol.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous now. Should I drink out of the Ed Fund or the OMN Fund?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So Tracy Welch and I are here. I'm Joe Wiemelt, principal at Urbana Middle School, to talk about our lunch supervision and lunch group. Invited Tracy. She, back in the fall when we came to the board asking for the lunch groups, Tracy jumped right on it to volunteer to coordinate all of that. Was very appreciative, and so I invited her tonight to assist in our conversation. Back in the fall, we talked about adding about 8 to 9 teachers to start lunch groups of about 10 to 15 students per teacher to have lunch with their teacher for a couple different reasons. One, to reduce the number of students in the cafetorium at once. We had larger groups of students than we've ever had in the past, or the recent past, in the cafetorium at one time. So that was able to reduce 30 to 50 students per lunch period out of the cafetorium, as well as building more positive relationships for students with individual teachers that maybe they have during the day that they haven't got to know well, or teachers that they didn't have and just wanted to build relationships. And so that took off. You approved that for 8 to 9 teachers at about $30,000 to $35,000. Very much appreciated. It has, this process has drastically improved the lunchtime. The number of students in the lunchroom is much less, and the relationships that are being built between teachers and students has increased, and we're seeing the general culture and climate around lunch has greatly improved. Safety, just due to the sheer number of bodies in that cafetorium, has improved. But what happened was the 8 to 9 teachers that we had talked about starting jumped up very quickly to a number of teachers requesting to do it. It jumped all the way up to as many as 24, 25. And so I'll give you a little bit of numbers, and then we'll talk about cost and what we need to do moving forward either way. And we're here to say we will go either way. I will take responsibility for it going beyond what we had talked about in the fall. At that point, we didn't want to turn people away who wanted to do that, and we needed to do it in the fall to kind of establish the safety and the culture and climate during lunch. So currently we have 24 teachers across 6th through 8th grade, 6th through 8th grade that are participating, that are getting paid. We have 280 students across 6th through 8th grade that are eating lunch in lunch groups, anywhere from 8 to 15 students per lunch group. We also have probably 5 to 6 additional staff members that are doing it not being paid. Once we hit that 24 mark, we said no more. It was getting a little out of hand. Should have done that a little sooner, full disclosure. We have also some staff that are at the end of their, the 6% piece that would love to get paid for it, but they're still doing it. They're the last few years of their careers. So we have jumped up now to where if we continue at this rate, we'll be reaching that $30,000, $35,000 budget, 31 request by the end of this month, going into March, somewhere into March, the end of 3rd quarter. So we still have the remaining 4th quarter that we need to have a plan for. And so we're here to discuss the pros to what we're doing. We can talk about the positives that we've gotten some feedback from staff and students about this, but also if we need to back off and keep it at 31,000, we just need to know that so that we can put a plan in place to pull back what we're doing. But just some of the feedback that, Ms. Welch, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the feedback that we've got.
Sure. I sent out an email to the teachers today because Joe and I, for some reason, we thought this was next week, I think, but asking the teachers for the positives that they're seeing with the lunch groups and some changes and some tightening up that they would like to see. I was surprised, and I've been involved in it from the very beginning with Joe, the positives that we're getting out of it. I knew many of them, but I was surprised by some of them today, so I can share a few with you, and then I can let Joe share some. Unbeknownst to me, that from our counselors who take lunch groups and some of our team teachers that there were several parent requests this year for their kids not to be participating in the cafetorium. So we're meeting that need of the parents, and I think that it was a much larger number than I had anticipated of parents because of the beginning of the year and such, and incidents that requested that their kids be moved to an alternative location. From what I've heard from the students and the teachers who both responded today, that the locations right now are all safe and loving spaces. Nobody is going to a lunch situation, a lunch group where they don't want to be. Everybody is volunteering. Everybody is volunteered to go to the lunch group. So everybody feels that they're in a safe and loving space. They're not set in concrete. Kids can opt and say, you know what, I've maxed out my time with this group of kids. I'd like to go back to the cafetorium. And that's kind of what I took over for Joe, was just the managing of that. So the teachers email me who's moving out, who's moving in. It's a very fluid situation. And then I have to keep the spreadsheet up to date because, of course, we need to know where our kids are at all times. And teachers have done a phenomenal job of keeping me updated, considering that we have 24 people doing it. The relationships, the thing that's changing, what I see changing the culture and climate of the building, is our teachers already have good relationships with our kids, and we're getting much better at building relationships adult to student. What the lunch groups are changing is a student-to-student relationship, and that's been our biggest concern this year. All of our activity or negative events have been basically student-to-student, and what's happening in the lunch groups is because teachers are taking kids cross-team, the kids who would never see each other are having lunch together and seeing each other. So that was an unexpected plus that we had, even though we kind of hoped for it. Also, we've had advisory, which is part of a middle school philosophy for years. And as much as I love advisory, our teachers are not as trained in it as they once were with all of the new teachers that we talked about. And I would think that our lunch groups, I would venture to say anecdotally that some of our lunch groups are making a bigger difference in our kids than the advisory is doing right now. Because it's mainly our veteran teachers that are taking the kids. A few of our new teachers are, but from my spreadsheet, it's mainly the veteran teachers. I'm also finding out that not only are the kids getting to know each other better, some of the teachers are taking it upon themselves to allow this as an enrichment time. Mr. Sands told me today his group, his lunch group, they have now kind of outgrown, they're getting to know each other, and now they're making videos and they're doing computer things. So some of these, once they've gotten the basic peer-to-peer relationships, now they're ready to move on to some kind of enrichment, which is another plus we didn't expect. One of our teachers told us too, and I know we've talked about this for years, is that it provides that much-needed social recess for our kids that we have never in 25 years been able to figure out how to give our kids recess, and this is the closest thing we've been able to give them. The cross team. One of the students actually talked about this because my 6th grade teachers got the email early enough that they could survey their kids during lunch today, and the kids said for them it decreases their anxiety transitioning to the electives, because at the middle school everybody at lunch transitions to an elective. Nobody goes back to team, right? And this has decreased that anxiety to electives. So that was another plus we didn't expect. And of course, it increases the management in the cafetorium. I mean, and the plus side on the cafetorium, and I know it might drive some of you crazy, it drove me crazy at first too, is that because the sheer numbers are so much smaller in volume in the cafeteria, our kids are able to get up a little bit more and socialize more without it becoming chaotic. It might look chaotic to us at first, but when you notice that it is kids just getting up and naturally talking, kind of like they do at the high school in the Commons, a little bit. So it has freed that up. Like I said, the teachers appreciate the flexibility. Several teachers said they truly appreciate being paid for this position because it is a professional respect that you are giving up your lunch. And please know that we have only paid people that are actually giving up a lunch. So if you can take your lunch at any point during the day, you weren't qualified to be paid for this. It was only if you were only offered one lunch period were you allowed to be compensated for it. So many teachers felt like that was a nice professional plus to doing it instead of just doing a favor. And then again, the one the kids all said they love the relaxing environment, the movement, because they do move from the cafeteria to the classroom, and they're allowed to move in the classrooms. I mean, I have a counselor who's watching the girls make videos every day. I mean, there's just so much going on that I can't even tell you. And then I'll just sum it up by one student said, my lunch group is legit. So if we have kids saying that, then to me, I think it's kind of worth it.
Yep. Yeah, just a couple more things,
Yeah.
and then we'll open it up for any questions. One thing is, with the decreased number in the cafetorium, we've been able to do more fun, engaging things in the cafetorium. So we are running online gaming things through the projector, so students now are able to use their 7th and 8th grade. Don't mention this to my 6th graders, but 7th and 8th graders can use their cell phones at lunch in the cafetorium. And so we're doing online virtual games with them that are school focused. So they'll do geography quizzes and Kahoot games online and other forms of media with their cell phones, and it's keeping them engaged. And you're much easier. It's much easier to do that with 200 kids instead of 330 kids, for example. So we're doing more of those sorts of things in the lunchroom when there's fewer kids, which is fun and exciting. They're able to do that in their lunch groups as well. The last thing I'll mention is, I know we talked about this just being this year and still holding to that. We are looking at, we're formalizing a master schedule committee to look at some changes for next year with the master schedule. Nothing that increases time or anything like that. We're looking at the possibility of wrapping advisory around lunch so that we can build on this idea, but that it doesn't require lunch groups to be paid. So we're looking at possibly reducing the amount of time that students are at lunch, and then they have the other half of their lunch period of 40 minutes like we have this year to be advisory/social group. That's just one idea that's been posed. So it would be like the high school where you would have A or B lunch. A would be your eating lunch, B would be advisory or like a study skills type of class. But the same idea, small groups, some time to just kind of decompress, have some social time before you move on to class after lunch. And it reduces the amount of kids in the cafeteria at once, and without having to pay extra money. So that's our goal for next year. But for this year, again, sorry to have to go after Carol's presentation. We would ideally, if it's possible, if we could continue to fund these 24 teachers to continue their lunch groups, we would greatly appreciate it for the remainder of this year for fourth quarter. That does look at up to how much money, Carol? Up to
Basically,
70?
yeah, it's going to be
upper
close to
60s.
69 to 70,000 through the end of the year. We basically spent the 31.5 the board approved probably by the end of February.
Okay.
That's going to be out.
Yeah,
So
end of February.
we either stop it and this 31.5 wasn't budgeted either. That was a October ad. So we either stop it, or if we're going to continue, that means it's going to be close to a $70,000 ad, because none of this was budgeted. We did several things back in October at that same meeting.
You don't mean an additional 70,000, you mean 70
Total.
minus the 30,000.
Exactly.
An
70
additional
total for the year is
Yeah.
what we are adding.
Right.
Correct. So it's an additional 20,
upper 30s.
39 maybe.
70,
Yeah.
if you go to the 70, yeah.
Gotcha.
And as principal, I started this presentation earlier by saying I take full credit for it going over budget, and so I'm willing to take full credit for having to scale it back. I know that there will be some pushback to that, but I will take that heat because that was my responsibility. You gave me the directive of 31,000, and so I'll do what's needed to do, what we need to do.
So this will come back to the board at the next board meeting, March 5th.
I want to give my clinical perspectives on that. First of all, you all envision we sit down to dinner with our families, and that's the only engagement time you get to hear things. In that situation, they're developing a rapport and getting to know that individual teacher. And they're young still, so their minds, who they trust and who is very supportive as a friend. So to me, it's kind of like a family sitting down together. And I think that is a real good point you made, because it is social development and engagement. So are the groups, my question is, okay, is it the sixth grade, or are they integrated, 6, 7, 8?
It's just by grade level.
By grade level.
By grade
Subgrade
level,
is
so
by grade.
that's good. So in seventh grade, would they change, or could they stay connected like a family, or
We
how
could-
were you gonna do that?
Because their schedules would be off.
Well, we could, I mean.
Kids could.
The kids could,
Mhm.
yeah, you wouldn't have it with the same teacher from sixth to
Okay.
seventh, but you could have it
Okay.
with the same kids.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so then they are learning rapport and
Right.
developing rapport
Right.
with a teacher.
That's right.
Okay, I like that.
Well, firstly, my two kids at the middle school have noticed a big change at lunchtime in terms of the level of stress.
It's
that
been
part-
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's really
it
been-
really reported that back to me, so I'm really thankful you're progressing with this. Couple questions. Have you had any discipline data that would show any sort of change around lunchtime, before and after?
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We've seen a dramatic decrease in disciplinary issues during lunch, particularly as it relates to fighting or any kind of physical aggression, horseplay. The biggest issue during lunch before was the horseplay, like playing around in the lunchroom with 330 kids all at once was just chaotic. And so there were all kinds of disciplinary issues that happened because of that, because horseplay, I tell the kids every day, 90% of the time it's just play, and then 10% of the time it turns into something real.
Exactly.
And when it's real, with 330 kids all in one place, it's scary. And so that has gone away dramatically. We've had no major issues at lunch since we've switched to this, in the lunchroom.
And I know your ask is for the rest of this year, but you mentioned thinking forward to next year. Have you given thought to the fact that with our new contract, we're going to be not a 6% limit, but at a 3% limit? And how is that going to affect your teacher participation going forward?
So what I would envision is looking at building it into the teacher day. So it's not expected that teachers would take it on to, building into the teacher day in terms of it's within if we wrap advisory around lunch. So advisory would no longer be the morning and then something else at lunch, but we would wrap it around lunchtime for teachers. So it wouldn't be taking away their duty-free lunch and paying them for it. It would be a part of their day.
That makes sense.
Instead of the morning, which there's pros and cons to it being in the morning.
Yeah, I mean-
It's tricky, but definitely, I want to figure out a way with a master schedule on how to reduce the number of kids in the cafeteria at once and create small groups and reduce the amount of time they're literally eating and increase time around lunch that's just for de-escalation and social time and being able to be ready to go to class after that.
I mean, as a one-time expense, I'm perfectly okay with this, especially considering the amount of change we've already had this year in the building. I like to keep something stable, so.
And I do want to add too that when this first came out, I just want to make sure you know that our teachers didn't just pick and choose kids. Oh, I'll take the 10 best well-behaved, whatever, most well-behaved. I mean, they have taken on some real tough kids too at lunch. It's very across the board. All kids are involved in the lunch group, so it wasn't, just an easy $25. I just want to make that clear. I mean, we thought maybe that was going to be the case, but it has turned out that the teachers have grown to love it as much as the kids have grown to love it.
I view this as a worthwhile thing from all kinds of angles, including Benita's angle, and but what it makes me think even differently, wider. Here we're spending a lot of money creating large cafeterias in our elementary schools. We spent a lot of money creating this large cafetorium at the middle school. We also recently expanded the size of the high school. In my memory, I guess it's a long time ago now. 30 years ago, we changed the size of the high school. Is it time that we think about the architecture and the way that our cafeterias look? You're saddled with the type of furniture that I sat on in the 1960s, which is very different than the type of furniture that high school kids sit at in the commons, which has a huge impact. And rather than buying I know that new furniture for the middle school is on our to-do list somewhere along the line. Are we thinking about how this impacts that? are we thinking about how we can do noise control or how we can create small groups inside that large space where they can still use the screen up top, but is there ways to have 8-foot-high partitions and so forth that allows this to occur? Because also what's going through my head is that I can see our cleaning staff having nightmares about food being all over the building with the possibility of bugs and all kinds of stuff everywhere, or the ARA staff being responsible for cleaning up all over the place instead of just cleaning up the cafeteria. So this is a big deal.
Big conversation, yeah.
And I think that anything we can do to get us back to that family feel in our schools is important, and will the spending the money now, in my mind, could save us a whole lot of heartache and a whole lot of spending money in the future. And so I'm willing to support, as you've explained this one, and I'm willing to support it for this year, but I really do like your creative thinking in trying to get it down to where this is a one-time expenditure and not adding to our cost load that's going to come back to haunt the 7 of us, because someday we're going to be sitting up here having to do budget cuts.
Definitely.
And I don't want that to be on the budget cut list.
Definitely. And I would say, I'm right there with you. Thank you. And I want to think very innovative thoughts as it relates to everything at UMS, curriculum, instruction, and just the physical space and how we use it as we move forward in my tenure there. One of the things this summer, actually, Dr. Woods, before he left, was thinking about round tables, circular tables, new ways of like the landscape within there. And we had 366 graders coming in. They weren't going to fit unless they were in the traditional rows that we have right now. And so if we figure out a way with our scheduling to have the A-B type of setting, something like that, where there's only 150 to 200 kids at once, we could go to like that type of seating arrangement that looks more like the high school's commons area, where we could partition things off and be more creative in that space. I'm all for that.
Or in the space in the hallway right outside the
Or outside it.
cafeteria.
Or I know with the architects, we were talking about right outside, on the outside too, using that space during nice season.
Yeah.
We have to be very intentional on how we do that. I'm looking at Dr. Williams with our middle school kids who like to walk off sometimes. But I want pie in the sky with a lot of those things. So it is a one-time cost, and definitely want to think about how to do that within the confines of what.
Well, even if you start to do that, we can make better use of the stage space as well.
Stage space.
Because that stage space sits there during the lunch hour behind a curtain, or, not being used at all. And that helps to
definitely
spread things out a little bit.
Definitely. Okay. So we'll come back in March, I believe.
Yeah.
Good.
March 5th.
Thank you guys very much.
Sounds
Appreciate
good.
it.
Thank you.
Sounds really good.
We amended the agenda to take a report from Becky Parks, and so Becky, we've held you here till almost 10 o'clock at night. I apologize.
Oh, gosh.
Just make sure the light's green when.
Okay. Thank you so much for adding me to your agenda. I'm Becky Park. I'm the choir director at Urbana High School, and I'm here after people have talked about not having enough money and asking for more money. I'm kind of here to do the same. I'm not going to ask for $40,000, but I wanted to share about a really exciting opportunity that my students have been provided with, and that is we've been invited to sing at Carnegie Hall in New York next month, really a month from today. And I'm taking 25 of my students from 2 different a cappella groups, and what they're going to be doing there is singing with I think it's around 200 of the best a cappella singers from all around the world. There are people coming from Hong Kong and Scotland and Canada and some really cool places. And so they'll get to rub shoulders with a lot of these different people. And they're going to be working with a man named Deke Sharon, who's kind of the guy in a cappella. He arranged all the music for the Pitch Perfect movies and the Sing Off show. So they're going to be doing this amazing performance with amazing people at Carnegie Hall, and it's a really exciting opportunity for them to do that. On top of that, there are some solos that will be happening throughout the night, and 2 of our very own students were selected to sing those solos at Carnegie Hall, and those students are Martell Jones and Ariana Rent, so that's really exciting as well. That is the cool piece of it. If you can imagine, it's really expensive. There are 2 entities that we have been paying throughout the process in order to make this happen. One is called DCINY, which stands for Distinguished Concerts in International New York, something like that. And they're the ones that produce the show. They're the ones that book Carnegie and the esteemed professionals that we'll be working with. And I believe that the total amount that we owe them for the 25 students and for the VIP chaperones that we need to have at these different rehearsals and whatnot with the students comes out to about $21,000. And then obviously we have a travel agency that we've been working with for flights and lodging and all that stuff. And we owed them a total of around $28,000. So it really comes, $27,000. So it comes out to a cool $48,000. And before I even committed to doing this, I met with the parents of my students last, I want to say May, and I sat them down and I said, we have this really exciting opportunity, but I'm not going to commit to it unless you feel like it's possible. It looks like it's going to be around $1,800 a student, and that's a lot of money for our kids. And my a cappella groups, I think, are very representative of the actual Urbana High School building. I think there are a lot of clubs that, you know, there's a lot of great kids in there, but they're not representative of the students in our building. And I believe that the a cappella groups are both, you know, mainly from, especially if you look at, you know, our school has a little over 60% of students with a low SES, and my a cappella group is the same, if not a higher percentage. So asking them for $1,800, I mean, even asking them for $10, sometimes they're like, I don't have it. And so I had all of the parents that came to the meeting, they, you know, gave a resounding yes. They knew that this was a really unique experience for the students, and they committed to working with me throughout the summer to come up with some really innovative and great fundraising opportunities for the students so that we would relieve them of that $1,800 burden as much as we could. And we actually started at the end of May with a big garage sale, made a couple $1,000s there. We did another garage sale right at the beginning of the year, made another $1,000. Throughout the summer, we were doing fundraising, and we've been doing just so much fundraising throughout the year, and I'm not going to bore you with the details of everything, but kind of the big highlights. We've been doing concessions at the U of I, and students have raised close to $10,000 doing that. We did a lot of caroling over the winter break, and students sang at Lincoln Square Mall every Saturday. They also had a lot of different caroling gigs, and they probably raised close to $4,000 there. We wrote letters to people. We did a lot of selling type of fundraisers, and there were some students, especially the ones that were the most in need, who ended up raising so much that they didn't have to pay anything. And in fact, some of them ended with a surplus. And I think it's a direct result of the fact that those parents worked so hard with me to create a lot of different opportunities. All of that being said, we are sitting in a position right now where we still need about $8,000 to make this trip happen and to pay off all of our final payments and whatnot. I think I'm still waiting on some payments from a couple students who, we were like adding concessions dates as we speak, because there are some students that just couldn't get the payments in on time. What I would really love, especially because I, without a shadow of doubt, can say every single student has been working as much as they possibly can. Their families have been pitching in. It would be great if I could say, like, this $8,000 came in and now we're done, like we're good, like now we can just focus on, you know, working on music and whatnot. But and then we also had the addition of needing to take an administrator with us, and having to pay for the administrator to go on the trip with us as well. And although they're not, you know, having to pay the extra, it's like an extra $300 or $400 to do the VIP chaperone, to go to the rehearsals and whatnot. It's still close to $1,000 that we've had to add because, you know, and I understand why we need an administrator with us, but that is an extra addition to our cost as well. So that is my plea. That is why I'm here.
Yeah.
I should have brought some kids because they're a little bit more convincing than I if they were to sing
Yeah.
and dance in front of you. But I believe we've worked really hard to get to this point, to be able to say that we've raised basically, around $40,000. And obviously, that's not all money that we fundraised. A lot of it was just students saying, hey, I can just pay this amount or, whatnot. But we raised a very good amount of money, and the kids have worked really hard, and that's where we're sitting right now.
Surely we can.
I'm aware of one that went door to door and raised over $1,000 by
Yeah.
singing, going door to door.
Yeah.
So you should have brought them along because
I
you
should-
might
I
have
should.
paid them
Yeah.
$8,000
I
for
know.
a concert.
Yeah.
I mean, I could like do a little ditty for you.
Yeah, I know.
You probably don't want that either. You just want to go home. So.
No, that's right. Well, I've been to several of the fundraisers. I mean, this is just spectacular. Yeah,
Thank you.
and your kids you do wonderful work with them.
Thank you so much.
You
I
deserve the
appreciate it.
credit. So surely we can come up with $8,000. I mean, I can't believe we.
Well, my kid's one of them, so I don't know if
Oh, sure.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but you
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
so
that's right.
We can play that card now.
yeah, I mean, the kids have been working really hard all year long.
Totally, yeah.
Not just fundraising, but all the rehearsals and the practices.
Yeah.
She's at the school at 7 a.m. almost every day, rehearsing with these kids.
My goodness.
And I'm getting high schoolers at school at 7 in the morning every day.
You're right.
Yeah,
that's-
mine especially at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I have a young student group that does concessions too, and I've seen you guys there.
Mm-hmm.
It's impressive that they, yeah. We can find 8,000.
We cannot take action on this tonight. We can do a straw poll and put it on our agenda for March the 5th, so
When
that
will
they
you
have
need
some
that?
expectations.
When will you need it?
As soon as possible, but
So they can stop.
yeah. To be 100% honest, we had payments due during the cold days, and I contacted DCINY. That was the one that I think they're the most, not like lenient, but Carnegie Hall will take their money at any time, but travel agencies, like they need to pay for, things like lodging and airfare, especially to lock our seats in. So I was able to pay off our travel agency in full, but the GCNY group, they gave me a little bit of an extension. The extension date is earlier than the March 5th date that you guys will meet,
Oh.
but I think I could contact them and
Yeah.
say, this is what's happening.
Well, can we take a straw poll? I mean, Ruth Ann's not here, so obviously we can't speak for her, but so to give a sense of where we are as a board, so.
This board has a special meeting this coming Sunday with action to follow, and we could
Oh.
add this to the agenda on
Oh,
that
that's true.
day,
That's true.
provided it's going to be a successful motion. I wouldn't want to mislead.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to vote on this?
Oh,
I would think so.
sure, sure.
I don't want to.
How are you going to vote?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
These matters of which I will lay out a challenge that amongst the 7 board members that we personally raise $500. No less than 500 amongst us, just as people, as persons. And then we take it from there. So, and I'll match dollar for dollar any dollars raised by any board member.
Thank you so much.
We'll get it done. And then we'll put the balance on the agenda for this coming Sunday afternoon.
Thank you so much. We all really appreciate all
Yeah,
of you.
oh.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for,
We hope to make you proud.
you already have.
I would say with this level of publicity, when, if the News Gazette would help out a little bit, and she's back there, ready to do it.
Yeah.
If you'd like to have an open practice where people pay to come in and watch you practice,
Yeah, yeah.
I bet we can put together a lot of this money really, really, really quick.
That's true.
And I will invite you to tomorrow. It's an odd time, but at 3:45, my male a cappella group, they're going to competition on March 2nd. And so they're doing a preview concert just to kind of practice their competition set in front of people. And there will be a rather large tip jar going around that, we're expecting it to be. So if you want to be there to see them in action as well.
3:45 tomorrow, where?
Yes, in the auditorium.
In the auditorium.
UHS.
Members watching us on TV, please keep that in mind. 3:45 tomorrow afternoon.
Yes.
Auditorium.
They don't think anyone's coming, so
Oh.
won't they be shocked?
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Please notify your administration that we have invited the community at 3:45 to the auditorium. Okay.
Okay, is it all
Thank
right
you.
for me to make that an invitation?
Yeah, oh, okay.
I didn't think about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
3:45 is pretty
Okay.
close to all the traffic in and out, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, it's an early release day, so.
Oh,
it
it's
should be-
Wednesday's early release
Yes.
day, so
Yeah, so
we'll be able
there
to
won't be a lot
accommodate
of traffic
people.
at that point.
All right,
That's
Yeah.
all right. We'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank you.
Bring
Ms.
to us, we'll put the item on the agenda for aid assistance for the a cappella group to go to New York. We'll not fill in the amount until we get there on Sunday, and we'll find out where we are.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Parks.
Next report is superintendent search update, and I have a very quick email to go through on this that we got from our site consultants. The position is, and some things that might be in addition to that. The position has been advertised, and they're already receiving applicants, and including the one posting that we were going to pay to have done by one group has been converted into a mass email to all of their subscribers that they're willing to do for only an extra $100. And so that's part of their expenses, and it's part of their budget, so they're moving forward with that. And they said, so there'll be about 5,000 emails out to around the United States for that.
Good,
Um,
okay.
They've also begun the posting of the 2 assistant superintendent positions. They have everything in English, Spanish, and French ready to go, including the survey and the letters, the appropriate letters. And the one thing that we're going to talk about tonight is the focus groups and the forums and the opportunity for the public to be involved. And our goal is still within sight of being able to be awfully close to naming a superintendent. They actually won't start until July 1st, but we hope to be in a position to bring a name forward during the first week of May for work. For those that missed the process meeting that we had, there'll be, the board will do, the consultant will narrow the number of applications down to roughly 7, maybe 8. The board will interview those folks and narrow it down to 3, and then at that time, there'll be an opportunity for public input. Over the 3, we'll bring the 3 forward to introduce them to the community with the idea that then the board will be in a position to make that decision for the superintendent. That named person, along with Preston, as our acting superintendent, will then assist during the latter half of May and into June to get our assistant superintendents named so that all the new appointees will be in a position to start work for the district on July 1st. Leading into that is that the ad that's out there is a generic ad, but in order for the consultant to best bring forward the 7 best possible candidates for us to look at, 7 or 8, is that we need to develop a profile of what we want the next superintendent to be about. And to that end, on March 6th and 7th, which is a Wednesday and Thursday, there will be a series of focus groups that we will put together that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. And also those evenings, those 2 evenings, there'll be one forum for staff and another forum for the public, which anybody and all can come. And they will get a lot of input from that. They're also going to get a lot of input from a survey, an electronic survey that anybody can access through our websites and through the city website and the district website. and fill out that survey, and that will be fed back into developing the superintendent profile. For the focus groups, what we are anticipating is roughly 15 focus groups that will meet during the day on Wednesday or Thursday, the 5th or the 6th. Get that in front of me.
Sixth and March 6th and 7th.
6th and 7th, I'm sorry, 6th and 7th, not 5th and 6th, 6th and 7th, for everything I've talked about, the forums and everything. The focus groups will consist of groups from the central office administration, building administration, teachers union, non-union employees, central office staff that are not, the support staff for central office, local government, at least two groups of parents, a group of parents in Spanish and a group of parents in French, two groups of students, a business group, and then two groups of community partners, one of which will focus in on restorative practice, and the other group will be just ordinary, everybody's ordinary. Our business community, and other parts of people that work for various organizations that have direct relationships and work with the school district. So those groups can include like the Urbana Alumni Association, the Urban League, NAACP, Racial Equity Task Force, Schools Foundation, those types of groups. We have a list in front of us, and a potential schedule. So board members, the purpose of it being on our agenda tonight is that over the weekend, we worked initially with the search firm when we met with them, and then over the weekend, Lori and I worked a little bit to refine some of these. And it's now in front of you for any additions of groups that we may have missed, and focus groups that there might be a different topic of focus group that you think we should add. Peggy, I know you have.
Yeah, my one comment, and I mentioned this to John already, is because of our district's emphasis on racial equity, I strongly feel that we need a focus group designed to draw out the goals and commitments of our district racial equity team. I know on our community partners, we've invited several who are involved in, racial equity issues in the community, but I think, because we have for the last 3 years or more been really intentionally involved in racial equity issues, and we have a professional team that has been planning our, the monthly meetings and the spring equity institutes, that we need to have a focus group that really draws out those goals and commitments, that needs to be part of the profile. That's different from what the community does.
And that's different from restorative practices, that they're completely distinct things.
Right. I mean, maybe we would combine those since we can't have unlimited number of focus groups. Maybe it would be one discussion of those involved with our restorative practices along with those who've been involved with the racial equity work. I mean, because they share a common, there's not. I don't know, to me, having our Elaine Spungen with a community partner where, she's a contracted employee, she works for the district, she's not out there in the community, I mean, maybe she does things in the community too, but her value to us is as someone who's working from within, and I guess I'd rather see her combined with others who've been very involved, the professional development team within our district who've been working on racial equity issues. And I know Joe and Lupe and Natalie Bretz and others have been involved in that work, and they might, be able to identify who those people should be. But I think if we want this to come out in the profile, and we all feel very strongly about that, I think we need to have a focus group designed around that, because we can't, but may not just come out otherwise, and that would be a gross oversight.
I'm seeing heads nodding. And so the way that we'll title it, but that would be a second staff focus group teacher focus. Well, it's not just teachers, it's, we have one that's teachers, where the union is going to be naming those that would come. And so what you're suggesting is another group, staff that's aimed at, with that in common, and that different individuals would be in charge of naming the, each focus group is 10 to 15 individuals. And so the fact that we have 15 or 16 focus groups, that's all over 200 individuals.
Right.
I mean, we already have an existing racial equity task force that operates, has members in all of our buildings, right? I mean, we could probably leverage some of those people to participate or invite them to participate in such a
Yeah, I
forum.
think the racial equity task force that we were referring to under community partners is the community-wide racial equity task. Oh, okay, which would be part of this group as well. Part of this new focus group that we talked about.
I mean, I think we could leverage a lot of the folks from the staff who are already participating and have intimate knowledge on the goals and the current practices.
Yeah.
Right. So if we don't want to add another focus group, we want to keep it to 15, maybe we only have one community partner group and then have one that's the racial equity district admin team or something like that, with individuals to be identified by.
I think that would be good, because we have to respect the consultant's time and and the time that they need to squeeze all this into 2 days.
Right. But then I would suggest moving Elaine Spungen over to the racial equity district admin team, so that would be part of the.
Yes. A single of staff.
On racial equity issues.
Yeah, although, but having her part of the community partners, that doesn't make sense to me. And a focus group of one doesn't make any sense either, so her work.
We gladly have her on the CO focus group.
Would you?
Can you put her on there, Lori? Thank you.
All right.
Now you want a racial equity district group. Joe, how many people you guys have a part of that? Are you still a part of that or no? Yeah. So do you have a slot available?
My clarification question for Joe is, out of that 8 to 10, how many are building administrators that will already be in that focus group?
In the building administrators.
Lupe's going to be in central office, we'll be in the building administrators. All crossovers.
Well, could you identify, I know there are people at the building level who are not, who are, in addition to the building administrators, who've been active in those monthly meetings. Could we identify them to be part of this new racial equity district focus group so that we get those voices, I mean, more than just the building administrator voices? I mean, there's,
That's what we're really trying to do, is eliminate people having to choose in one group or the other.
Right.
Because they only come to one of these. And these are reflections, these are 45-minute sessions. Where there's a lot of discussion that occurs, and guided discussion. Because the intent of the focus groups is to help the consultant develop the profile of our positions.
Most of them are guided questions.
Yes.
That help them define the profile. So, I mean, it's far-reaching, but it's pretty focused as far as what their questions are and what they're looking for and those kind of things. So, Lori, we have some. I remember this afternoon we were talking where there's some spots available for another focus group. Okay.
I just want, so, clarification, because the letters are supposed to get out by next Wednesday. So, community, so you're going to have a racial equity group, and that's going to be your racial task force in focusing group, and the PD cadres.
no, my suggestion is that Amy felt anyone who does community stuff, racial equity, will provide good input, but as a community person, not, the racial equity district is just district people who are doing it on behalf, as part of their work. That was my
Yes,
suggestion.
and that's, I'm on board with that, too.
That
It's-
Amy
it's a-
felt
It's a
he-
way, quite honestly, let's use this as a way to make sure that our focus groups are reflective of our community,
We can,
that all facets of our community are involved.
we can,
School community.
Lupe and I and the rest of us can collaborate and give some names from our PD cadre, from our PD cadres across the district, and also. Sure. So the group needs to be about 8?
It should be between 10 and 15.
10 to 15, okay.
Between 10 and 15, no
Okay.
fewer than 10, no more than 15.
So we can provide a list of the PD cadres and anybody on the racial equity district leadership team who isn't attached to another group.
Good.
And put those on a list and give that to Lori.
Great.
Correct.
Thank you.
And we've identified who would be naming these folks, and the point of Lori's comment is that we need to have the individuals identified by the end of the week so that they can be notified and their schedules set. 2 student groups. Two groups of students. So and it's high school students in particular, Gage. So it's would be potentially a Sage, I'm sorry, would be a maximum size of about 30 students involved. And we're leaving it to a fairly wide variety of places from which those students will be appointed. But the idea is to make sure that the students involved are reflective of the student body, not just a racial profile, but income profile, interest, whether they're sport types or whether they're student government type or drama type, all the various facets and all the various kinds of ways that students experience Urbana High School. We need to have students that reflect that.
So did that answer your question, Lori? So the community partners' names are all correct, except Ms. Spungen's going to go to central office. And just one community partner group, yeah, and one racial equity.
So we do want board members to look over to make sure that we have, if you have any, for instance, groups, the community partner that we've failed to talk about, or a business, that we failed to talk about in this list.
The
please
community
add
partners includes the Ministerial Alliance, correct?
Includes who?
The Ministerial Alliance.
Yes, that's what Interfaith Alliance at the top, very top.
Oh, there it is.
And
I
I
missed that
added
thing.
UAA, the Urbana Alumni Association.
Good.
And
Schools Foundation.
Yes,
Do you
Theo
think it
Schools
would-
is on there, yeah.
Would it be helpful to have somebody from the mental health board, somebody who would represent mental health services?
Yeah.
if they're involved in the school, because this is depict a profile of the student superintendent.
Yeah. that's-
School-based health center would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's actually pretty essential.
yeah,
Mental health is involved in the schools.
yeah.
But school-based health center.
School-based health center. Yeah.
would-
But I was just saying, because you got the SAS program that
Yes.
is involved in school, which is under an organization.
Yeah.
So,
So you can see some of these,
Yeah.
focus groups have a long list, and others don't. So anything this is the board's opportunity for input into who
okay.
should be included here. So please get the information to Lori.
By Friday?
Faster than Friday, because she's got to have
Okay.
names to
Okay,
vote by
before Friday, okay.
In other words, Urbana Alumni Association is down, but we don't know who from Urbana Alumni Association, because there's only going to be one representative
Sure,
from
yeah.
the Alumni Association, most likely. Yeah, so. Yeah. Are we done with that?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay,
This
people
is
get
good.
your names in, please, and organizations, and make sure that it's very reflective.
Okay.
And we want to repeat that there will be a general community forum on Wednesday, March 6th, at 6 p.m. at Urbana High School for the community at large. Okay. But it's definitely that night, or is it flip-flopped? Put, definitely Wednesday, not Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I've gotten some feedback with regards to the forum we had at the Commons back in the fall, that there was insufficient microphones for people to.
I was there. It was absolutely hard to hear.
So we want to make sure that when we actually hold this, we've got sufficient microphones and. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Actually, the auditorium has much better acoustics, and you don't even need a microphone to be heard there.
That's true.
If it's available. That's our target date. If we have to change it because of conflicts, we'll let the public know, but that's the date that we're aiming towards.
No, it's true.
We're hoping not to have to change it. We're hoping not to have to change it.
It'll be on our website and Facebook page, right? That's how people can stay apprised.
And we'll do a lot of, as much public notice as we can.
Right.
Broadcast out to the, okay. We ready to move on to communications? It's 10:20.
I think that looks, looks good to me.
Unless you get input from board members between now and noon
You
tomorrow.
got to change the focus groups, but yeah, no, you got, right, I mean.
Noon tomorrow,
Noon
please,
tomorrow.
everybody.
Okay.
All right. There are no communications nor policy review tonight. There is a consent agenda that has several items on it. There are no minutes at this point in time. February bills and checks in the amount of $1 million. Operations and maintenance fund bills in the amount of $212,000. Bond and interest in the amount of $1,300. Transportation fund bills in the amount of $251,000. Working cash bonds in the amount of $671,000. Tort in the amount of $27,000. Payroll in the amount of $3.9 million. And adult education fund bills in the amount of $106,000. There are two interfund loans. We talked about that earlier tonight. Working cash fund to O&M in the amount of $750,000, and working cash fund to transportation in the amount of $350,000. There are various personnel items to be talked about, none of which there's no outstanding retirements or so forth that we need. And 11.5 is a resolution authorizing and directing sale or disposal of personal property, and this has to do with some equipment that's no longer used at the high school. Is there a motion to approve the consent? Anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Rollins Gay? President Demmett?
Yes. Motion's carried. We do have individual action items this evening. The first of those is gifts. And Todd Kenny and Peggy Patton donated $100 to the Evelyn Burnett Underwood Music Program and an Armstrong flute to the Urbana Middle School. Aaron and Christy Gerch donated a trombone to the Urbana Middle School. And the following donated a total of $200 to the Urbana Middle School Band Activity Account. Amy Vandergraft, Sarah McElroy, and Hussein Sahit. I know how to pronounce that man's name. So Hitaglu, it's not that, but that's how, sorry, Hussein. Anonymous donor purchased a subscription to the News Gazette valued at $160 to adult ed, and Sarah Greason donated $100 to the Evelyn Burnett Underwood Music Assistance Fund at Urbana Middle School. Motion to approve the gifts would be in order.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded to actually accept the gifts and send congratulatory notes. That's what the motion, I'm sorry.
It is.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We have a memorandum of understanding for the Care for You District 116 group, and this is between Illinois State University and Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. And this has to do with summer youth employment for many of our students. The RPC's role is to handle they become employees of record, so RPC handles the payroll Illinois State handles some of the education stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and our own staff helps in the placement into various industries.
I move acceptance of the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This we can do by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Life Safety Working Cash Request. Boy, I wish this weren't at the end of the thing, because I know you've got some optional things on there, on that list, that potentially need some discussion. But Matt, do you want to have anything to say right now?
Yeah, just items 3 and 4 for Thomas Payne. Working with the architect for the school district, we have written an amendment to extend that time period for completion in lieu of Thomas Payne being one of the last elementary schools that has to be renovated. We're looking to write the extension so we can incorporate those 2 items into the school's renovation at that time. So those can be optioned off the request for the work.
So this list of 8 items is not things that you're trying to get done this summer?
I'm trying to get them all done except for those 2 Thomas Payne ones.
Okay, any,
Completion date is 2020, so it can be up to next summer as well. So 2 summers, all this work over 2 summers,
over 2 summers, okay.
with the exception of those Thomas Payne items.
All right, so that's number 3 and number 4.
Yes.
So we're excluding those off the list. So a motion, I'm sorry, you want them on the list, but just not slated for completion?
We can option them off the list because IGW and myself are writing an amendment to extend them to a time period to be completed.
Gotcha.
Incorporated into the renovation of Thomas Payne.
So the motion should be for items number 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Correct.
5, 7, and 8.
Board members have any questions? Because the reason I'm raising it
Yeah.
is some of the things were not included in our 10-year decennial. And so it's new to you. So if everybody's comfortable with it, then we can move forward.
I'm fine with it.
All right, motion to approve items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Member
If
Hall?
there- I'm sorry, is there any discussion? I should have asked for that on the last call. All right, roll call.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Rollins Gay? President Dimmitt?
Yes. Motion's carried.
Thank
We do have several future special executive meetings that are going to occur in the near future. Tomorrow night and Thursday night, we have student discipline. We have closed sessions, closed and open. There will be action presumably, but we have student discipline hearings on Wednesday night and Thursday night, beginning at 5:30. And we have Sunday, a special meeting with action to follow that at 1 o'clock, which,
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
What
we're
time
just
Sunday?
trying to figure out.
1 o'clock.
Yeah, 1 o'clock. Okay.
1 o'clock. Length of time and when the any action would occur subsequent to that were unknown. It's a meeting with our law firm, and I only know the general topic is personnel.
So are we still having a meeting Saturday? Was that taken off the table then? Okay. Thank you.
February 25th,
Uh-huh.
and February 26th, and March 3rd.
Thank you.
For additional, you can't be heard, so I think you said February 25th and 26th at 5:30 at night, and the March 3rd, which is another Sunday again. And those meetings will also be for the purposes of student discipline.
And then, of course, tomorrow night, the 20th. She already mentioned that.
Yes. This board is meeting every free moment that we've got for those of us that are employed.
Way too much.
I'm tired of y'all.
Yeah, that's right. We don't even like each other that much.
So, to my knowledge, those are the special meetings currently scheduled between now and our study session in March. All right. Next is superintendent report, including the FOIAs.
No superintendent's report.
A man of few words.
Yes.
Trying to teach me to be the same. Well, we do have to orally talk about our FOIA report by way of Mike. So, Lori, if you're going to give it, or who?
I'll read it, John.
Okay.
All right. FOIA report, Lee Gaines, Illinois Public Media. All correspondence, including but not limited to emails between the USD 116 Board of Education member and Superintendent Don Owen between September 1st, I believe it's 2018, and December 1st, 2018. And the total amount spent on legal services, including the firms the district contracted with between March 1st, 2018, and the date of this request, February 4th, 2019. I request dates for all legal expenditures. Sorry. Deke Mills. Produce all contract or engagement language, payment, procurement, and/or expenditure records pertaining to 2018 and 2019 contract employment engagement of Dr. Preston Williams, Jean Corder, and Gail Jeffries. All email and text messages discussing or pertaining to USD 116 business between Dr. Preston Williams to Dr. Jennifer Ivory Tatum between January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018. All email or text messages discussing or pertaining to USD 116 business between Paul Pulaski and Kevin Erlinger between January 1st, 2018 and December 31st, 2018. Lindsay Jones, end-of-year detailed expenditure reports by account for Title I grant funds for fiscal years 2017, 2018, and 2019. End-of-year detailed expenditure reports by account for Title II grant funds for 2017, 2018, and 2019.
All right, and have nearly, most of these have been completed, and sent. All right. Board reports.
Mine is quick, too. I went to King School for Napa Day, and they were doing such an excellent job. They had black art out, and parents, an abundance of parents were out, besides your administrative team. Your Yolanda Smith was there, so I was very impressed. So I just want to tell you that.
Just a reminder, we have our IASB dinner coming up in Mahomet on Thursday of next week, so.
Other boards.
Real quick, I just want to reflect back on last week's, we had a large public comment session, but a particular note to me, of impact to me, was the student comment, and I think it'd be good for us to talk about in a future study session, ways to possibly solicit more student input at these meetings, either with a student designee, or we could brainstorm about it, but I think it'd just be good for us to hear from more students here in a formal way. That's all.
Some boards in other states have students.
I've been to
National
school board meetings where Alaska is the most advanced in this, but there are several states, and I brought that idea back to this board a couple of years ago, and it was on a list of objectives that our superintendent was to work on to bring back some proposals to have formal student seat at this table. And apparently that got lost in some of the other time-consuming things, and so we can always bring that back. I think it's a good idea. It's been something I've been wanting to see accomplished for quite some time.
I agree.
I cannot let tonight's meeting go without thanking, or without recognizing Luke for the tremendous achievement of 3 statewide championships. Statewide recognition is just statewide recognition for him, national recognition. So we have to make sure that he makes it back to a school board meeting in the relatively near future.
And the boys basketball team.
Boys and girls basketball team are both doing better than anyone thought they would ever do.
That's not true.
At the beginning of the year.
That's not true. For those of us who follow the teams, we knew what kind of squads they were going to have. But we will certainly work with Mr. Waller to have the winter athletic teams represented here at a board meeting. That's not a problem.
That'd be great.
And the winter guard.
Winter guard.
State champions.
First time ever doing that sport, and they end up being state champions. So dynamic things are happening. All right, with that, further reports. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.